All right, I'm a little late to the party, but people have been asking me to watch this actually for a while. It's about God of War 2018, like how it was ruined. Frankly, I think God of War 2018 might have been certainly one of the best God of War games that they ever made. Might be one of my favorites. I mean, I love God of War. I grew up with the God of War games. I was in my teens when I played the first ones. It really spoke to me. You know, an angry, angsty young guy. You know, angry. You know, they had some pretty cool mini games, if you know what I'm saying. You got to see some pixelated, you know what I'm talking about. It was cool, man. It was violent. It was brutal. It was fun. It was a little different for the time. It was cool, man. Getting older, the newer God of War speak to me in a different way. I'm a little older. My anger is better under control. A lot of that's because I have a great wife, and so like it kind of resonates with me there too. So I really love the evolution, and I think 2018 is probably my favorite from a story perspective. I think it does better than the older games specifically because the older games fall a little bit victim to like oversaturation. You know, Ascension wasn't great. It kind of convoluted the story, and it was to make a game to make a game. Chains of Olympus. Which one am I thinking of? Let me just make sure I get in the right ones. List of God of War games. I'm thinking. Blah, 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 blah. Which one was Chains of Olympus? Chains of Olympus, I think, was a little annoying too. I think Chains of Olympus was the one. The first PSP game. That one was like a little unnecessary. Ghost of Sparta was fucking fantastic. That one was fantastic. That one was great. The game was actually incredible. Surprisingly incredible. Like this, it did so much positive for the story, and it shored up some of the negative aspects because I feel like it got a little wonky. So 2018 has a lot of source material to draw onto, and then it's not as saturated in my opinion. So it kind of contains the story a little bit better. So I liked it a lot. I thought it was great. I loved the way the direction that they went to. The first time I played it, it was played differently than the older games, so I was kind of frustrated with it, but replaying it again, especially recently, it's just a fantastic story game. It's about 15 hours to beat on like normal, which I think is a really good pacing. The other one, Ragnarok, is a little long in my opinion. It probably could have potentially been 2 games, but yeah, loved God of War 2018. I'm curious as to how it was ruined. Let's just watch this.
Considered by many to be the best game of the year. God of War 2018 is considered by many to be the best game of the year.
For sure.
Even the game of this generation. A defining moment in the history of gaming, setting the standard for all that follow. But for me, it was a disappointment.
Why?
A tedious slog that tricked audiences into loving it through its technical achievements and
I don't think that it was a tedious slog at all. I thought it was pretty solid.
pretentiousness. It's going to be a long one, so grab a drink and a snack.
Pretentious?
Get ready to get angry. This is how God.
I also thought like Boulder Fight was a fantastic, especially from an emotional. It was emotionally solid. Like I liked the journey was great. Some of the playing was a little frustrating sometimes, you know, especially if you play with classic controls. It can be difficult to throw at different targets. Well, I probably shouldn't have played in classic controls, but I preferred them. But overall, great stuff.
God of War was ruined.
Ruined.
So before we break this disaster down, let's look at what made the God of War series so great in the first place. A little bit of history. March 2005, I first heard of God of War when I saw the GameSpot review. A 9.3 score, and the game looked so fun that I immediately drove out to buy it.
Yeah, I replayed the old God of War games unnecessary amounts of time, especially 1 and 2. I beat them on like all the difficulties. I rebeat them over and over again. I loved those games. 3, it was a little disappointing from a story perspective. I'll probably get into that as we do this video. Some people probably think that's like a hot take, but I'll get into that as we do this. But
from the very start of the game, you know you're in for a ride. The fire, the epic musical theme, and that iconic opening line.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
Yeah, the first God of War game had a great, simple story that was fantastic. I mean, you're playing as Kratos. He's like in his 30s who just went through this entire redemption game to try to get the gods to forgive his sin. And then his sin is that he asked for Atreus' help. When he was about to die, he became Ares' lackey, murdering whoever he wanted to, because Kratos is not a good person. Like, that's one of the great parts about the prequels, or really the originals, not prequels. He's not a good person. He's not a good guy. He's not a good character. He's an anti-hero, and he's very relatable and understandable, but like he goes on a murderous warpath, and Ares puts his wife and child in the way, and he kills them. Hey, baby. He ends up killing them. And then he's trying to get his revenge and go back after Ares. And the gods are like, "Oh, we'll forgive you for your sin of killing your kids, basically, and your kid and your wife." But he says it in a way as like, "Oh, I want to forget these memories." And they'll say, "We'll forgive you." And the implication is that they'll strip the memories from him, but they can't do that. And it's the first like double speak. You see the first time where Kratos is engaged with political language he doesn't understand. And Kratos isn't a stupid person, but he's not a politically intelligent person. And you see how like they use their language to betray him in some capacity and to kind of use him and take advantage of him to get to Ares to stop destroying stuff, which is a positive outcome because Ares is just recklessly murdering people, and Zeus has a very specific rule against gods, going after other gods, probably so that a big war doesn't break out. It does kind of make sense. So they do use Kratos. It is honestly, in my opinion, for the greater good. But that's what the game is about, and you kind of learn through his history and all that. And it's a very fun, productive game. And at the end, you just give up hope and try to take your own life. So.
Now there is no.
And my theory is, and I'm getting really into this, I'm very into God of War. My theory onto why they didn't let Kratos die, specifically, because I don't think that they particularly care for Kratos as you play the other games. But I think that the reason why they didn't let him die is because they were worried that the Titans would get their hands on him. And some of this theory comes from playing God of War, like Ghost of Sparta. Anyway, they were afraid that the Titans might get their hands on him. And they didn't want that to happen because that could have been catastrophic for them because they didn't want to use him as a tool. So,
No hope.
Kratos is an instantly fascinating character. His look, his voice, and the sadness that pours through his expression as he throws himself into the sea. This game wastes no time in getting started.
sure.
After a 3-week
It is a very fast-paced game.
setup, you find yourself on a ship in a thunderstorm, surrounded by monsters, the legendary Hydra destroying other ships in the background. Here you are allowed to experiment with the game's excellent combat system.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Here's where you learn about how horrible the tightrope walking in this game is, because it is piss poor. It's one of the biggest criticisms I have of the game, and it's actually terrible. The tightrope walking, it happens 2 times in the game in a meaningful, well, really 3 times, but it's not good. It's a bit of a pain in the ass. There are flaws to the God of War game. The last boss is not very good. I'll explain Ares later. It's not very good. I'll explain Ares now. Ares is a terrible fight. It's a mess. The button mashing in this game is too aggressive, and it's to the point where it's like actually physically hurts. It's annoying. I replayed the game and I was able to do it, but it's like annoying as shit. They toned it down in God of War II. I think God of War II is better just overall. That's just frustrating. The last boss is not great. I mean, I would go as far as to say it's terrible. Phase 1 is fine. Phase 2 is like interesting but very frustrating. It's when like you're fighting a version of yourself. Phase 3 is terrible. You use a new weapon you've never really used in the game before. I mean, you could have used Artemis's like 2-handed piece of shit weapon, but either way, you're introduced to a new system at the end of the game in the last boss fight. That makes no sense. It's not a good way to design a game. Game is still incredible. All right, it's revolutionary, but it is not refined. It has plenty of problems.
One that is infuriatingly described by some as button mashing. Oh, you just mash square all day. Not really.
You do a little bit. It's a little simplistic, but it's great. Like, simplistic isn't bad. The game is very simplistic, and you can actually you can kind of game the system and take advantage of some things in the game, which is kind of funny. Like you can get enemies, especially big enemies, locked behind like invisible boundaries a little bit, and you can kind of beat on them, which I would do. You use like your Prometheus plume, I believe it's called. Your box triangle. So it is not as technically skilled, I will say, but still very fun.
Let's get into it. 6 presses of square, the light attack button, will perform a simple combo and finishing hit. If you incorporate the heavy attack button, triangle, the combo will end in a heavy smash. And mashing these combos will get you through some of the game, sure. But if you don't learn to change it up and use other attacks and guard, you will start to get punished. Hard. And you'll get wrecked on higher difficulties where a collection of 3 enemy attacks will take you down. The heavy attack button launches light enemies into air juggles, and holding it launches enemies higher.
Was this like a review for the first game? What the fuck?
Followed by Kratos auto-jumping into the air for a focused line of attack. In the air, you can use a series of light attacks, heavy attacks to bounce more enemies into the air, or use grab, the circle button, to keep the enemy airborne and do focused damage. Mix it together for a fun time. As you progress, you unlock different attacks used in conjunction with the block button.
I think I want to replay these games on the hardest difficulty because I just beat Ragnarok on the hardest difficulty, which wasn't too bad. But I did all the other ones on normal just to get like the story through. So I want to replay them on the hardest ones. I've beaten them like all on the hardest ones, but I think I want to play God of War 3 the most because I think it's the most fun God of War game. I think the story gets a little wonky. It's frustrating that like they redid the Pandora's box thing. They did this really weird, like, hope-filled ending. It just doesn't really go with the original God of Wars. It's just very bizarre. The ending, it's not a bad ending. It's just like weird. I'd say to replay the first 3 to understand what I'm coming from, but it's just bizarre. It's like the tone shifts in such a bizarre way. I hated that. In the third one, they made up this like magical narrative where when you released Pandora's box in the first game, it made the gods like evil, because that's what it was. And it's like, but all their actions were justified. Like in they were assholes to Kratos. Kratos has every right to be pissed. But like, what did they do in God of War II? Kratos was just doing what Atreus was doing, killing people, and Zeus came down. He's like, hey, drain your power into this sword, which I don't know why Kratos would do that unless he trusted Zeus, which is weird. But anyway, he drained his powers, and then Zeus was about to kill him and said, like, listen, just pledge your loyalty to me and I won't kill you. And he's like, no, fuck you. And he kills him. But it makes sense that he would want to stop him from doing exactly what Ares did. So again, it's very weird and jarring for God of War 3 all of a sudden to like to make that narrative that they were evil because of Pandora's box. They didn't need that narrative for Kratos to be justified in his actions of being betrayed in different instances. And then with Ghost of Sparta adding on to the story, that gives Kratos even more justification to be pissed off at Zeus. They didn't need this, the gods are bad because Pandora's box narrative, and it was just lazy in my opinion. So
longer animation attacks that adds...
Yeah, it was just the worst boss fight, I think, in like any God of War game, to be honest with you. Zeus was fun in the God of War 2. God of War 3 was like, it was fine.
Style or effectiveness to your fighting technique. Horizontal and vertical spinning attacks that do many hits through long animations, and heavy smashing attacks that do massive damage.
He's showing God of War 3.
Or hit enemies all around you. And God of War 3 takes it to a whole new level by introducing the grapple attack, a good interruption to enemy animations, and a great source of mobility.
Sure.
If you're able to continue your hits without getting hit yourself, or stopping for too long, you build your combo meter. The more consecutive hits you get in a combo, the more red orbs you get.
Sure.
And you need orbs to upgrade your weapons and magic. It's a risk though, as enemies will not respect your attempts to build hits. A multi-hit grab or a long spinning animation could be interrupted by an incoming attack, ending your hit accumulation. The spinning attacks give many hits to your counter, especially when surrounded. But you cannot stop the animation to block. You must commit to it and be careful. If you're just mashing it, you'll get hit.
Okay.
And on higher difficulties, that means you die fast, especially since hit stun allows multiple enemies to brutalize you in turn before you can recover. So you have to play smart, control the fight, and integrate multi-hit fancy attacks when you can get away with it.
Sure.
The grounded grab, circle, is a
I feel like we don't need this much, but okay.
fabulous mechanic, as it gives you the
I'm
option
double
of A,
speeding this 'cause
throwing
it's
the
just-
enemy at the others to give you some space. You can target different enemies to take out a specific threat too. This is your strategic control option. B, insta-killing to take out an annoying threat with a brutal kill.
It's like info dumping. I don't feel like all of this is necessary.
With God of War 2, this and other grab kills give a reward of 5 orbs, making this option much more useful. And C, punching multiple times, which adds to your combo meter. You can use this option to push your combo meter just a little bit higher at the end of a fight to try for a higher orb bonus. Large enemies give prompts for minigames that lead to savage kill animations.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing about the original God of War. The minigame sucks. Like there's not enough timing in between. You don't get enough time to do the minigame. This isn't an issue I had when I first played it. Replaying it was an issue, and I'll tell you that they know it sucked. There was not enough timing because in God of War 2, they're more charitable with the timing, and the visuals are much more stimulating to get you to react faster. So that was like another technical issue with God of War 1. It doesn't make it a bad game, but like again, they improved that in God of War 2. I think they did perfect in God of War 2. I think God of War 2 is the best prequel just from a fun perspective and a fun perspective, an improvement perspective, and from a story perspective, I think God of War 2 is the best. It's just my opinion. Because they improve on God of War 1 in such a beautiful way. Like all the issues that you have from God of War 1 are gone in God of War 2. The tightrope walking is better. The tightrope's better. They changed one of the buttons for like mashing to open things from square to like R2, I think, which makes it a little better. It's like a little less stressful in the hands. The button mashing isn't as aggressive. The quick time events are much more charitable in a positive way that makes it fun. I think God of War 2 is so much better.
And not for nothing, you are awarded extra orbs for these kills, and certain enemies may give you health afterwards, like the Minotaur, or magic from the Medusas or the Sirens. And as the game progresses, there are so many different monster types that the minigames usually feel fun to do, because you don't encounter the same large enemy constantly. And these games do a great job of making you hate these enemies, and really feel the rage inside of
I'll tell you that these centaurs, for some reason, like were unnecessarily harder than like the actual bosses in the game, which was stupid. That's God of War 3.
Kratos. So there's a primal satisfaction in shoving your blade into a Minotaur's mouth, or ripping the eyeball out of a side. This is important. Do you see what the game is doing? The game is actively encouraging you to have fun and be flashy.
Sure. I mean, I had fun in God of War 1.
It's incentivizing
I
you
mean, God of War 2018.
to use multi-hit moves by tying their riskiness directly to the benefit of your combo hit counter, which rewards you for being creative and not stopping. And the minigame kills benefit your health, magic, and orbs, as well as serving as a release for your tension. The heavy attacks are there for when you just need something to
What are you coming on the screen?
die, and then a grab mixed in can help control the fight space or give a brutal kill. Magic gets added into the mix beautifully, as lightning spells control space and multi.
I mean, they're all right. I feel like the magic system's a little like annoying sometimes, a little restrictive, but it's not too bad.
hit. Medusa's gaze freezes enemies and gives large
Medusa's straight, so more like it, am I right, guys?
brutal kill orb bonuses as enemies shatter. Zeus's lightning bolt can multi-hit and effectively eliminate a targeted threat.
Who the fuck upgraded Zeus's lightning? I'm just asking you a serious question.
And the
Like, you always did Poseidon's Fury. It's like the best. It's the best out of any God of War game. Poseidon's Fury is like the best spell out of any God of War game. I actually liked Tartarus's Rage from God of War 2. It wasn't too bad. It was just like different, but I kind of liked how like you didn't use it anymore. Like, you used it and it was just out there while you could go through attacks, and it did like a decent stunt. So
The other games follow this design and improve on it. God of War 2 has the Chronos orbs and the Typhon wind bow, and much better flashy attack
yeah, the God of War 2 did also good. Like, you can move and shoot, where like you couldn't do that in the first God of War, so that was an improvement. I like that. Yeah.
animations. God of War 3, along with the amazing grapple, gives a bow and arrow as a separate ability apart from the magic. And there are 4 different weapons to use, featuring advantages in power, magic, and multi-hit
I like that. I like that they did the different weapons. It was cool. It was like a nice little fun design.
ability. God of War 3 also allows you to switch weapons mid-attack, and finally gives you a lot of reasons to switch constantly. Not
Yeah.
only are there great reasons to switch weapons, but it's also incredibly fun, and you'll want to switch weapons.
I guess so. I didn't really feel the need to switch weapons a lot. I just would like do them. The way that you upgrade the weapons was a little restrictive, I felt like, and didn't necessarily encourage doing a lot of different swapping, but that could have just been wrong. I
Because
don't
you're
know.
having a great time. It's just fantastic design.
Maybe I needed to play it on a harder difficulty again, just so that I can have like a better idea of it. You know what I mean?
Visually,
Because once your limits are tested in a better way, like, you are obviously going to use your tools more.
the games are brilliant, beautiful, and inspired. All those amazing locations, and the scenery is always changing.
It's not too bad.
Ships at sea in a storm.
I didn't like that the second boss that you kill in God of War 3 is fucking. It's bizarre that the second boss that you kill is what's his name? It's fucking Hades after you just lost all your power. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It makes sense that the first boss you kill is Poseidon because you have all your powers and the help of a Titan. But it was kind of like jarring to like lose all your powers and then still like lose all your powers and then still kill Hades one-on-one. But I will maintain that I think one of my favorite boss fights, possibly my favorite boss fight in the entire God of War franchise, is Hades. It's just such a fun, stimulating fight. It was just when doing it was like fun. I liked it a lot.
Hades, Mount Olympus, the Titan Atlas, swimming sections.
I hated every swimming section. I don't think I've ever really enjoyed that part of the game. It was always a slog. Honestly, I don't think it was ever very good in my opinion. But
Deeds of Time, the Pits of Tartarus, the Caverns,
okay.
Pandora's Temple.
Hey, thank you so much for the 20-month small god from Intense Reality. Poop and Pee. I appreciate that, brother. I really love Poop and I really love Pee. Thank you for the $2 from Willow Amnesty. You're a cool guy, Pops. Keep it up. Thank you. I appreciate that, I guess. Why am I a
The
cool
Desert
guy?
of Lost Souls, the Titan Gaia, the Labyrinth.
All right. Also, I thought that the way Gaia betrays you in God of War 3 was lazy. I think it made sense for her to betray you because you're a dangerous fucking emotional person. Like, it makes sense for her to be like, we can't use you. But they did it so lazy at the beginning. I feel like they just could have done it better. And that's the most frustrating parts to me about games or any media is when what happens in your story is good, but how you make it happen just doesn't work as well as it can work. It's lazy, and that part frustrates me a little bit.
Flying across the sea. So many vivid scenes, and meticulously framed. The fixed camera, while limiting the player's perspective, allows the game to have a
So the camera in God of War 1 was frustrating in many instances, I'll tell you that.
truly cinematic presentation, and sells the epic scope of the adventure. Kratos is small when set against this intimidatingly large world. Combat is also commonly framed by a distant, angular, often overhead camera. This allows the player to have full sight of the battlefield. You see what enemies intend to do and where they are, giving you the time to decide to roll, jump, activate magic, or block.
Thank you for the $5 from WOR. I co-signed Willow's message. Oh, thank you.
Importantly, block is universal and auto guards against attacks from all directions. So you're fine.
Oh, I'll tell you another thing that was so good in that went from God of War 1 to God. I just changed my build. What are you fucking kidding me? That was so good in God of War 1 to God of War 2. The blocking was so much better in God of War 2. In God of War 1, you could do a perfect block and then you get a retaliation. But if two things attacked you at like once like in succession, your perfect block goes away because if you let your block down, you're gonna get fucking punished. And that was so frustrating because it takes away like all this fun, momentum and power that you feel from it. In God of War, in God of War II, they decided that when you blocked, you instantly did an attack back that was like gave you immune invulnerability frames, and that made it so much fun. It made it more satisfying to utilize. And it's not something that I complained about while playing the first God of War until I was like, oh, this is so much better. What an improvement on a system I didn't even know could have needed improvement. I love that.
Fighting, and all the while you're able to admire the beautiful scenes in the background and the design of the level, because you're not distracted by having to move the camera all the time or watch for flashing indicators.
I think that's just a playstyle difference.
In addition to great combat and visuals, there's exploration. It's a linear game, but there are lots of little hidden areas with bonuses for health. And
I mean, there's more exploration in the new God of War games than in the old ones. And frankly, I don't particularly care for exploration. Which is, so you'd think that it was like negative to me, but I like not exploring more. And that's just a play style preference for me. That's not something that's like good or bad. I'm not a huge exploration. I get like weird anxieties from having to explore too much,
Magic upgrades. Kratos has a classic platforming double jump.
Kratos.
He can climb many surfaces and ledges, scale walls quickly, and explore odd angles looking for treasure. There are lots of clever little secrets hidden, and many include having to think creatively and jump and climb. God of War II and III introduced the wings of Icarus, which you brutally rip from his back.
What's happening?
Now able to glide long distances, the games start to feel even larger.
I guess.
Boss fights are epic, sometimes involving puzzle elements, like climbing boxes to impale the Hydra, or freezing and breaking the mirror in the Sisters of Fate fight. Hercules. Zeus.
Okay.
The Colossus. The Minotaur.
What's happening?
Ares.
Ares is the worst God of War boss in any game. And if you ever say otherwise, you've never played God of War. It was just not good. This last, especially Phase 3, was just such dog shit. Like, I'm sorry. And it's disappointing as an ending, but it's still a great game. It's just like, it's so bad.
Kronos. Hades.
Hades was good. That Kronos fight in God of War 3 was awesome, too. It was visually stunning.
Perseus.
Perseus was a fun fight, too. I like that. I was in God of War 2.
Poseidon. The Barbarian King.
That was okay.
They're all so good, and the games do a great job of making you hate these characters so much that you want to see them dead, especially Ares.
This fight was also just like uninspiring from God of War 3. The Zeus, I feel like the end Zeus fight was just like kind of, I don't know, it was like a little lackluster.
Zeus. Speaking of puzzles, these games have
This puzzle was just annoying personally.
plenty of them. Not so hard that they
I looked it up.
ruin your fun, and usually not so easy that it's obvious in 5 seconds. Construct a wall,
I looked
maneuver
it
the
up.
box before the spikes kill you, swimming quickly to avoid traps,
I hate the underwater areas. They weren't hard. It was just annoying.
Hera's garden using weird visual manipulation to create pathways,
That was cool, actually, from God of War 3. That was pretty cool.
using time travel to prevent suicide, pass through portals to unlock secrets,
That was a fun one, too.
the ice melting puzzle,
That one pissed me off. I had to look it up. I think I was just having a brain fart that day.
open the architect's tomb and cross the platforms, raise the grapple hooks and freeze time to cross the rooms.
How old is this guy? Does anybody know?
And the story is fantastic. Kratos, the greatest Spartan warrior, sells his soul to Ares, the god of war, in exchange for victory in the face of defeat against the barbarian king. In service of Ares, Kratos' thirst for blood leads him right into Ares' trap, and in a blind rage, he accidentally kills his wife and daughter, severing his emotional ties to the world, to forever be
Well, no. That was Ares' attempt is to sever his emotional ties to the world. It doesn't exactly work, though, and then he ends up having a fucking meltdown.
Ares' servant. The town oracle curses Kratos to be eternally covered in the ashes of his dead family,
Yes, he
always
does.
reminded of his sin. He turns his back on Ares and swears allegiance to Zeus and the other gods of Olympus, serving them for years in exchange for their forgiveness. When Ares lays siege to Athens, the gods must stop him, but are forbidden from intervening directly.
I think with Ascension, and it was so convoluted, that he had to kill the Furies in order to break the bond to Ares. It was so fucking stupid. I just don't even know why they added that game in there, to be honest with you.
Thus, Kratos is tasked.
Well, for money, is obviously. But then also, you know what? I actually got to give Ascension, I don't know if any of you actually played Ascension. It's not really good. But the one good thing I will say about Ascension was that it tried to do something new. And what it tried to do is to keep up with the trend of like Souls-like games that were coming out that required more skill in a different way. I could see it in there. It didn't work. It wasn't very good. But I could respect what it tried to do. So I can appreciate that.
Tasked with finding Pandora's box to obtain the power to stop Ares, which will end his service to the gods and finally win their forgiveness. This takes him through Athens, the Desert of Lost Souls,
Again, he thinks that it's going to give him removal of the thoughts, not just forgiveness, which is something to keep in mind as well.
back of the Titan Kronos, Pandora's temple, and the underworld Hades, leading to the final confrontation. All the while, we are fed pieces of this story paced out like a good mystery. You finally do battle with Ares, including a surreal dream fight where you battle your own guilt. And
Athena's villain turn in 3 was wild. She didn't turn into a villain. She became some like weird existential character that was above the gods, and it was random and it didn't really make any sense to me. When they killed her in 2, it was really emotionally impactful, and they should have just left that like that. I don't think that they needed to. They overcomplicated it like so stupidly. It was just dumb. I'm in odd groups, so odd groups with Moon.
Protect your family from yourself, even going so far as to allow you to transfer health to them by hugging them.
Yeah, this I hate. I didn't like that phase, to be honest with you. I thought it was not good. You know, I didn't really particularly care for phase 2 of the last boss fight. Overall, is just bad. Like anybody who thinks it's good is just never played God of War. It's so unfun. I don't even know unless you play it on fucking easy. It's not good. The game has its flaws.
Ultimately, Ares falls. And while
like it gives you a new weapon, like again, you get Artemis's I think fucking sword, and they play similarly, but upgrading it doesn't give you the same sword upgrades from the last boss fight, and it doesn't make any sense to give you a new weapon in a final boss fight ever. It does. They do it okay in Black Myth Wukong because it's just you're walking through the game at that with just like when they give you the stone form and you're beating the shit out of the gods. Like it's easy, which is fine, but like you can't have a difficult boss fight with a new weapon combat system. It just doesn't work, and it's not good. The Ares fight is the worst fight in like any God of War. I don't think anybody would find a hot take that's played God of War before. What's going on, brother?
while you are forgiven of your sins, the gods will not let you forget. Kratos must still be tormented by the memory of what he's done.
Okay, but like you have to understand that this is a very big plot line, and you need to thank you for the $2 from Brandon. Incredible. They make him think that they can remove the memory from him with their political doublespeak, and that's why he feels betrayed by the gods, and it's very important to bring up because it's a big motivator for him as a character,
which he can't handle. So he steps off a cliff to die, but is then rescued from death as the gods need Kratos to take over as the new god of
Well, they don't need him to. They just have him do it. And again, I think my theory is that they didn't want the Titans to get a hold of him. And what ended up happening? The Titans got a hold of him
War.
when they died.
A mortal given godly status and power to forever watch over
and like he's not a mortal. He's actually the son of, you know, Dingeldorf over there. You know what I'm talking about. He's fucking Zeus's son. Zeus is a fucking horned dog, boy. Horny dog.
guide the wars of man.
Based
So don't tell me that the new God of War finally gives the series a good story.
Well, did anybody say that the old story was bad? Who was ever saying that the old story was bad? Was that like a complaint? I don't even think anybody complained about that. What?
The original games, especially the first one, have fantastic stories.
Yeah, they're good. They get convoluted. I God of War 3, they become like actually annoying and frustrating, to be honest with you. Because again, I explained why. But like they still have a good story overall.
Filled with drama, character, emotion, and an epic
Who was ever saying that it was bad? Nobody. No way. Wait, what the fuck are we over here for?
sense of adventure. And I don't know if people have just willfully forgotten or if they're actively being
makes sense,
dishonest
actually.
by lying about the nature of these
Who said that it was bad? What?
game stories, combat, and everything else. But just because Kratos isn't walking around all depressed with a child next to him doesn't mean that these games deserve to be dismissed.
Who is ever dismissing the games? I'm not really understanding this argument. I think he's making things up. What ghost is he fighting? Is it the ghost of Sparta?
All right, now that we appreciate what made the original series so great, let's compare them to the new God of War.
Yeah, I think the new God of Wars are better for 2 reasons. 1, because there's more source material to draw from that's already established. 2, probably the nostalgia that, you know. But then also 3, it's because it's not as convoluted. Because if you played the old God of War games, there were so many games that were made just to make money that it got a little crazy. And they don't do that in the new games, right? Like, I mean, they gave us God of War Valhalla for free. Like, that's crazy. Like they're you know, so it doesn't oversaturate. The runtime is like just as long between the old games and the new games, but their story is dispersed in a much slower way, which I can understand might be jarring for some people.
From the very beginning, we have a very stark contrast in tone. No epic music, and there's an option for easy mode which says, give me a story.
Okay, there's an easy mode in the original God of Wars too. I don't understand the problem.
To me, this reveals that the creators have prioritized story and experience over gameplay.
Okay, and in the story, in the easy mode, yes. And you want to know what? It's the same thing in the original God of War. They don't say give me story, but the easy mode, I don't know if you guys know this if you ever played God of War. The easy mode is easier, which would by default mean that you're more interested in an easier experience and maybe even more interested in the story. These are just ways to communicate the difficulty of the game and has no negative. I don't understand the complaint here at all, actually. What?
Maybe that's fine for something like The Last of Us, but not here.
Why? It's a great story.
It's kind of a red flag.
Why is that a red flag?
But okay, I'm a veteran. I'll pick hard. I want a challenge.
Okay.
Wait, what? I'm mashing R1 to cut a tree?
Yeah, it's a story-related game. If you don't like that, that's fine. That's a personal preference if you're not a big fan of the story stuff. They did a really good job at the story. I don't know what to tell you.
Why? Why
Because you're burying his dead wife that he's in love with?
isn't this just a nicely directed cutscene?
That's what it is.
I guess I'm supposed to feel like I'm the one doing this?
Like, sure. I guess.
Okay, now we're walking. Walking. Oh, really? Press the left stick to move. Thank you. In a boat. Rowing. Walking. Can I move faster? No?
So, like, this is fine if you're frustrated with this, but it sounds to me like you want a game that doesn't have any substance to it. And that's okay. Like, the original God of War's, the story is given to you in different bursts. It's told to you, which, by the way, is not bad, but it's told to you more. This game does it does it in a different way. They kind of show you the story. The introductory tone is like, why is he so somber? Because his wife is dead, right? And then they introduce the story slowly through character dialogue. They're not just saying things to guide you in the game. They're saying things. They're giving you a personality that you can like or hate. So it's just a different feel of the tone. I liked it. I thought it was great. It was cinematic and it's good. God of War Ragnarok gets a little bit annoying with some of the way that they portray the story, especially when they make you play as Atreus, because he's a fucking terribly boring character to play. They did a bad job with that. It's okay from a story perspective. When you play it on hard mode, it gets like much more frustrating because like he is so fucking he's so unbearably bad. And he doesn't get good for a while, and it just makes it unfun to want to play. So I just fucking hate that. So like you can complain about that if you want. That's perfectly reasonable. 2018, it was, I think, better overall than Ragnarok. But what is the problem with this?
Can I go over there? No. Just gotta holding up, walking. All right, grieving over my dead wife. My second wife? Who was this woman?
You're learning through the story. That's the whole point of it.
God, so
and the music is fantastic, by the way. And I would argue better than the other one. But I mean, again, they have more resources, so.
dramatic with all the music. They're really trying to sell that this game is serious.
Well, his wife is dead, and he loved his wife. This is the thing. Like, if that's maybe you don't resonate with loving your wife or something, and that's fine. How old is this guy? Like,
here we get the gist of the story. We meet Kratos' idiot son, who immediately proves he's an idiot by grabbing a hot blade from the top of a fire.
So that's his mother's blade, and there's a lot of sentimental value, and he does grab it, and he burns his hand, yes. I don't know why that makes him an idiot. That makes him emotionally driven, and it gives him like a little bit of a complex story aspect.
So my son and I are going to climb the highest mountain to spread the ashes of a woman that I don't know in the slightest.
So it's your wife in the game, and you're a mature adult, and this is how they portray everything. You literally praise God of War 1 because they gave you the story throughout the game in interesting chunks without telling you directly as you go on, and now you're criticizing this game for not giving you everything, but like you praise the last game for that. I don't really understand. Like, you don't find out the story. You don't know the story of like the motivations. You don't know why you're throwing yourself off a fucking ledge in the beginning of God of War 1 until like more than halfway through the game, because they explain these things to you. You don't find out that you kill your wife and kid till maybe 80% through the game. This is very normal for video games in general that are trying to tell a story with a positive emotional experience. So why are you complaining about this as well? Like, it sounds like you just don't want to like the game, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't resonate with you, but like you're just complaining about things to complain. There's no substance to your complaints.
Didn't even see her face or a flashback. Great motivation. Picking up some stuff from the ground, walking.
Why do you need a flashback? This game doesn't really do flashbacks, and when they do, it's because Kratos has a dream. But you know that Kratos was in love with somebody and had a kid, and as you go through and you play the game, they'll give you character cues that like it shows you that Kratos has softened as a person. He's still like, you know, he's very stoic, but he's softened in different ways, and it gives you like an interesting character depth there.
Can I swing this axe on my back? No. Wouldn't want to let the player break the immersion of this walking scene.
It's just not the time for it there, bud.
So, but you know what? Fine. Okay. Long intro. Serious tone.
Yeah.
I like some serious games.
I liked it. I thought it was fun.
I love Metal Gear.
Which God of War should you start with? I would say God of War 1. I would start with them in release order.
Solid 1 and the original Silent Hills. And I'm not opposed to a total reinvention of a series. If it's good, I can give
it was good.
this a chance. Moving along, interesting place we're in. Ooh, what's over there? Maybe there's an item in there. X. Pressing X.
Yeah, you don't jump in this game. They decided not to have it because it would create an additional dimension. And since the layouts in the landscape is much more complicated, they wanted to have more control over it. You can be upset that you can't jump, and that's fine. But like, there is a justifier from a game design perspective as to why they did that.
Jump. How do I jump? Menu.
You don't.
Controls. I can't jump? There's no jump button?
You can't jump. It's
Wow,
not a big
forget
deal.
about double jumping. I can't single jump.
Okay.
Oh my god. How do I get over this crevice if I can't jump?
You jump, actually.
Circle? Oh, it's an
There.
interact button
Yeah, okay.
for stupid people, which causes Kratos to auto-jump Uncharted style.
Okay.
Suddenly, the entire series flashes before my eyes.
Because you can't jump? That's weird. If that much of a change upsets you, then I think you might have like a legitimate mental issue.
All those memories of...
Because like when I first played it, it wasn't my favorite either, because I hadn't played video games in such a long time. I mean, I stopped playing video games for like 10 years, and it's like, oh, this is God of War. It was so different. And it was like frustrating, but the story was always incredible to me. It just wasn't for me, and I was mature enough to be like, yeah, this maybe isn't for me. Going back to it, even with its flaws, with the camera can be sometimes a little bit finicky, it still was fantastic. So, yeah.
platforming, the exploration, the vertical level design, aiming and timing your jumps, the fast climbing, air juggling enemies, balancing sections,
You can air juggle enemies in this game.
all gone.
The balancing sections in God of War 1 were fucking dog shit. Don't even try to justify that. The balancing sections, they knew were terrible, because in God of War 2, they fucking almost got rid of all of them. Oh, this is how you know this guy never played God of War. Like, he never cared about the game. The first game is amazing, and it starts the greatest series, in my opinion, ever. The balancing sections, the tightrope walking, is not even arguably, objectively, the worst part of that game. It's so stupid, and it's unforgiving, and it's not fun. It's just a dumb part of the game. Nobody would contest this. They know that it's true.
4, 3,
Like, so what are you talking about?
1.
In an instant,
Let me see if I
replaced
can
with
actually
an
do this.
auto jump that requires no skill. You can't fail. You will never ever miss a jump and fall
You can fail at the game, you just can't fail at the jumps. Who cares?
in this game. Just hit the button
Oh,
and
no.
watch Kratos jump for you.
Because I love falling in games. It's a lot of fun and stimulating.
Interact button over the tree. Again, no timing or skill involved.
Okay, not everything has to be skillful. Like, you don't have to be... Not every part of a game has to be annoying and difficult for it to be a fun game.
I'm getting worried. I've been walking around in the woods for like 10 minutes doing nothing. But relax, we can still save this experience.
Okay.
It's God of War, and Cory Barlog, the director of God of War II, my favorite in the series, is back. It's going to be great. This is just the start, a slow start.
Your favorite is God of War 2, and you don't... Look, why is it your favorite unless you realize that it improves upon bad design? Then why aren't you acknowledging the design? If you didn't think... like, there's some legitimately bad design in the first God of War game, and it's understandable, but like, it doesn't break the game. The game's still fantastic, but...
Now, what's this here? Okay, I can throw the axe and recall it with triangle.
Yeah.
Cool. So, an axe. Changing up the combat approach, up close and personal. Very cool. I like it. I like the weapon change.
Yeah, I didn't actually when I first played it. I like the blades more. Now that I actually like the axe more now.
We got our first enemy, 15 minutes into the game, and we finally get to fight something.
Cool.
Let's go. Looks like our attacks are similar to the classics. Good. Light and heavy. But holding heavy doesn't launch into the air. Makes sense. Kratos has forgotten how to jump in his old age.
Well, you... Okay, oh, I forgot to do mechanic. Anyway, like, you haven't upgraded your abilities yet. What is he complaining about? Like, it does launch people into the air as time goes on. You just have to unlock that, and I'm pretty sure you don't get that baseline in the original game. I don't even know if you do, but eventually you upgrade it, and it does launch into the air. It's just like the old God of War games. You start with very little, and then you get more.
And there's no grab. Wow. Significant parts of the combat system have been gutted.
Why do you need a grab? Who gives a shit if there's a grab?
Okay, give him
Okay.
a little of this, a little of that. Okay, not bad. Throw the axe for a light hit, target the legs, throw it with heavy and it freezes them, and then I use my bare hands. Got it. Now there's a sidestep to counter attacks. Okay, that's a little awkward for me, but I got it. It's cool. Hack, hack, dodge, hack, 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 dodge, throw, recall, hack, hack, dodge. Wait, is this it? Is this...
I mean, the combat system in the original God of War was also pretty simple, and it expanded as you played the game. You know this from the original God of War because you talked about how you can upgrade your weapons to do more stuff. So you're playing the first 20 minutes of the game where you haven't upgraded yet, because it's the first 20 minutes of the game, of course, and you're complaining that there's not enough combat depth. There's not a particularly high amount of combat depth in the original God of War at first either. I would argue that this God of War has more combat depth and the end of the game than the older God of War do. So maybe the original ones start with a little more combat depth, but these ones end with more combat depth for sure. So what is your complaint? You're taking the first 20 minutes of the game and comparing it to 20 hours of the original series. It doesn't make any sense.
That's all there is? I see that I'm not gaining orbs or XP. Is combat
You are gaining XP. What are you fucking... Are you stupid? What?
not tied to an upgrade system?
What? You are gaining XP. What are you talking about?
I see that I'm not gaining orbs or XP. Is combat not tied to an upgrade system?
You are gaining XP. Are you like... Say, what are you talking about?
Am I just hacking and dodging and auto-climbing ledges and collecting silver on the ground? Suddenly
What?
my heart sinks deeper into
What is this guy talking about?
my chest as I start to fear that this is it for the whole game. And by the way, there is no magic. No Spartan army or summoning the souls of Hades.
You get runic attacks, which would be your magic, and I think the system is better because it's cooldowns instead of having to mana preserve it. So I think it's fine. It's also a better rage system because in the original God of Wars, especially God of War II, and I think 1 as well, it was pretty much an auto win if you would just turn into, if you would just go like Rage of the Gods or Titans or whatever it was for whatever series it was.
Just powers for your axe. A couple cool ones, sure,
And your blades, yeah.
but most of them are fairly boring.
What? They're fine.
They're all just ice themed or axe themed because
Or fire themed if it's a fire enemy, if it's using your blades.
it's an ice axe. You have to equip different abilities all the time, which is tedious.
You don't. You can stick with one if you want. What?
You can only use 2 out of the many that you'll find.
Okay, and
So instead of a careful
in the original God of Wars, you used for the most part 1 spell. And if you didn't play God of War, if you think otherwise, oh, they had 4 spells in all the God of Wars, you didn't use them all. You used the Rage of you used Poseidon's Fury in God of War 1. That's it. And the other ones you would use 1, 2. God of War 3 was a little better. You'd maybe use more because the weapons were tied to an ability, but for the most part, you were using 1. So what the fuck are you talking about? You're trying to make it seem like there was, oh, you used them all. No, you didn't. You couldn't even upgrade them all. Like, by the end of the game, you could really only choose 1 from the start. And if you fucked up, you kind of are just fucked. Especially in God of War 1. So what are you talking about? What is this guy fucking whinging about? He's just making things up. He didn't play the original games. I doubt that he even went back to and tried to play the original games. When this came out, he's comparing it to a nostalgic idea of what he thought the games were, but that's not what the games are. He's like full of shit.
carefully crafted experience focused around certain magic abilities, they give you a ridiculous
There's no... what are you talking about? There's no carefully crafted experience in the original God of Wars around your magic abilities. You got some badass magic abilities, but there was nothing, massively crafted. What are you talking about?
amount of customization options for powers to do whatever you want. They shove so much crap into the game with armor and abilities and blah, blah,
The armor system was fine. It just helped you with a little bit of a playstyle difference. It wasn't super in-depth, but it existed.
blah, blah. Can't you just design the game well around awesome items? Does everything have to be a huge open world where you run around collecting things and
You were praising the other games for having things that were somewhat open world-ish, so now you're criticizing it?
talking to strangers and
And, I'm not a huge fan of it, of, open world stuff, but the game was still good. I can acknowledge aspects that just don't resonate with me while still thinking the game is really good overall.
hunting for items?
What is
Do you
this?
have to give me 40 different kinds of armor for my wrists? The last thing I want to do in a God of War game is sit in the inventory for 15 minutes scrolling through armor statistics.
So don't. Just use a baseline of armor and just move on. You don't have to do that.
Let's talk a little more about the magic. In the originals, you had to refill your magic meter by finding blue chests.
Yeah, in this game you don't have to, so it's one less resource you have to deal with.
This meant that on harder difficulties, you had to be very wise about when you used it, especially since they give you less.
Sure, and guess what? Since you have cooldowns on your runic attacks, you also have to do the same thing. It's just a different system.
Magic could really help you in a fight, but
Yes, so it can runic attacks.
you didn't want to just use it all, because maybe in the next room, there's an even bigger fight. And if there's no magic chest from here to
Okay.
there, you're going to go into that fight with an empty magic meter. And
Okay.
that's a bad place to be. So again, strategy, resource management.
What does this
Compare
other
that
thing say?
empty magic meter.
Same rule applied to health. Health didn't recharge to 100% upon death, so fight smart. Okay.
And that,
Yeah, sometimes, who cares if they recharge to 100% or not?
that's a bad
God of War having better quality of life by letting you go into every encounter with full health after you died health doesn't make it a bad game. It just makes it a game that recognizes some negative aspects to it at the originals and wants you to have a better experience. So you die, you get your full health back, and you can see if you do it again. It's perfectly fine.
bad place to be. So again, strategy, resource management.
There's plenty of strategy in the other God of War game, in the newer God of War games.
Compare that to this game, where your special abilities recharge for free. And as you level up,
They recharge over a period of time, and you can't just use them as much as you want to fight. So you need to be intelligent about how and when you use them.
and your abilities get more powerful,
You just complained that you don't level up, and now you're acknowledging that you level up.
they recharge even faster.
Cool. Oh no, you get more mana too, which is the same as recharging faster in a different way. You get more mana to use the same spell more often in the fight. How is that any really different than you being able to have faster cooldowns on your abilities? I don't understand. Oh no, you get more powerful as you go on. What game am I playing?
So you can always feel comfortable using them, because they'll be back in a minute.
A minute's a long time in a fight. Like, it really is. Like, a minute cooldown, that's pretty standard. I'm playing World of Warcraft where I have minute cooldowns. Minute is not a bad thing.
If you really want to break things, you can find the Talisman of Unbound Potential, which instantly refreshes your special abilities. So
cool.
Walk into a fight, use all your abilities, drop the electric spell to stun everyone, refresh your abilities, and use them again.
Cool.
Fight over.
And this is on normal mode, you said? Or this is on the harder mode? Okay.
And as you're fighting, you get XP at random. This is
It's not random. You get XP by killing things.
perhaps my greatest complaint about the game. There's no reason to play with any style.
What?
And no reason to...
Oh, no, you don't get it at random. He's arguing that you don't get more XP if you do combos. Who cares? It's not really a necessary function of the game. Like, it was cool in God of War 1 and such. It doesn't need to always exist. Who cares?
Keep your offense going, because there is no combo meter.
What does it matter?
Combo meter to reward you for playing well and playing flashy. The only objective in new God of War is to kill all the enemies as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Yes, that's pretty much how most games are. It's nothing anybody would ever have a negative impact with or a negative relationship with, but okay.
It makes the combat so dull and repetitive and
Not really.
limited.
Then I guess the game is too easy for you. That's your complaint.
Because the XP I'm earning
But
is
like, the other God of Wars weren't necessarily that difficult, to be honest with you. God of War 3 added like a level of like more in-depth difficulty, but
not dependent on how well I perform. All you're going to do in this game is mindlessly hack at the enemies, sidestep, and hit with your best attacks. No grabs, no air juggles, no risk reward.
you can air juggle in that game. What is he talking about?
The creativity is entirely absent.
You can air juggle in that game.
And since the fights are mostly staged in similar ways to the originals, it just feels like the same old fights, but with a huge amount of limitations.
I don't think that that's really true, honestly.
Plenty of reviewers said
What the fuck?
asinine things like, finally, God of War has a deep combat system instead of just being a button masher.
The system is, I would say, is deeper. It has a little bit more complexity than the other God of Wars. I would say that for sure. The other ones were a little simple.
Hey, the original's combat was way deeper than this hacking and...
Not really. It really wasn't that deep. There's a weapon swapping, which adds like a layer, an additional layer. You do more damage with different weapons based on like usually you use your axe to put frost on them, and then you'll take your fire weapons out and you'll put fire on them because they'll do more damage now that they're frosted. And like, there is definitely, from playing them both, more depth in the game. The newer games are much more stimulating. 100%. What is he talking about?
dodging crap. Anyone who says the original games were just mindless button mashing,
I don't think it was mindless button mashing, and whatever source or article you came up with seemed to be a niche article, but it was more stimulating for sure.
I dare you to pick up the originals on the hard difficulty, or Titan or Chaos difficulty, and never play defensively. See how far you get.
What does defensively have to do with anything? That's not a very flashy style, though. Defending defensively isn't very flashy, and it wouldn't encourage your combos. Maybe they didn't want to restrict the player by forcing them to play flashy to get more combo points and make that, or more XP and make it reliant when it can be difficult to play. Like, I don't really think the combo system matters.
Try playing without intelligently using your multi-hit attacks and grabs and magic. And
It's probably the same thing in this game. It's difficult as well. I have a hard time believing this guy is like so good at this new game when he's complaining about every single aspect of it. It sounds like he probably lowered the difficulty to make it easier because it doesn't seem like it's his type of game, which is fine. But he's pretending that it's so easy when it really isn't. It's as difficult as any other God of War game, really. It's not easier. There are quality of life aspects, but the game I would say is like generally a little harder, and that's partially because it doesn't resonate with me as much.
see how fast you can upgrade your weapons. Good luck. And yes, those old games were designed to be played on higher difficulty once you master the combat.
Okay.
The combat was the main feature, and it was super rewarding to replay.
Well, so is this one. I mean, but this game is less about replaying and more about like mastering the game at the end, like mastering it at the end of the game, right? Like you can do a new game plus, but like also, or you can just like finish the there's like twice as much stuff to do after you beat the game. And so this one has a difference. It's like it's not so much about replaying it as it is after beating it, you can continue it and do more, use your abilities for more difficult challenges. So it's just different. I don't understand.
On those punishing difficulty levels. And the fact that they included those punishing difficulty levels in the new game is an acknowledgement of that. But they did it without including the rich and fun combat system. How could they?
I mean, it's just your opinion. I think it was fun. Thank you for the $10 from Michael Emmanuel. I think I'm saying that right. It's spelled differently than from what I'm used to. Hey Bob, a long-time watcher, first-time commenter. Don't usually have a lot of time to catch streams, but wanted to drop in and say thank you for keeping me sane at work. Keep up the content. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I really do.
They screw this up so bad.
They didn't.
Now, let's talk about the camera. Cory Barlog, the genius.
The camera is a little frustrating, especially in that first God of War game, for sure. That's definitely a reasonable thing to criticize.
The director of God of War II insisted on this camera style. The cinematic camera is now gone in favor of this so-called immersive over-the-shoulder camera.
Well, it is a little bit more immersive because you're playing through the character. That's the whole point of like that third-person view system. That is more immersive.
This isn't immersive.
This
is immersive. I'm absorbed.
That's not immersive. Like, you don't get that emotional experience from that. You don't have to like it. Like, you could be like, oh, I don't think it's necessary. I think it takes away from the game. That's fine, but it is more immersive. You're playing more as the character. It's a little bit more intimate. That is what people are like absorbing from this. So
to the architecture and color of the setting, I have total freedom of movement. I don't have to worry about moving the camera as I fight. I can admire the glory of my rampage and constantly see Kratos' rage as he murders and the music swells behind me. Not this. This is tedious. I'm staring at the back of his head for 95% of this game.
You just don't like it. Like, okay, a lot of games, like this is where the games are trending towards. So they want it to be like, oh, okay, people are enjoying this kind of RPG style. Let's go with that. It resonated with a lot of people, man. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm aiming.
This should have just been called like, hey, I didn't really like the play style of the game. Guy just seems to complain about everything. I think he's just a nostalgia baiter. I think he just like hates everything new just for the sake of it.
Kratos with controls designed for a shooter, and I can't see. Seriously, look at my vision range here. I can see 1 or 2 enemies, while there are multiple enemies behind me. Where are they? What are they doing?
Well, that's why they give an indicator on the screen to help you like see where an attack is coming from. Once you get used to it, it really isn't that bad.
God of War Originals, not a problem. The camera view lets you see all around you. If someone is going to attack, you react accordingly. But in this game, they changed the camera to show only what's in front of you while keeping the surrounding combat scenarios of the originals. This does not work.
It works pretty fine, actually, once you get adjusted to it, so it's not that big of a deal.
It gets better in areas like corridors because this control scheme is suited for shooters, like Gears or Uncharted or the new Tomb Raider. But significant amounts of combat are presented in open areas with enemies attacking from all directions. The only way to know if an attack is incoming is, you guessed it, on-screen indicators.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Oh, how I hate on-screen indicators.
I think it worked fine. It was a little janky, but you get used to it.
So not only is my playing freedom restricted by being forced to constantly adjust the camera, but now I also gotta be following indicators flying around the screen and changing colors. There are enemies behind me doing something. I have no idea what. I can't see them.
But you can see a red indicator means that you have to dodge now or you're gonna get punished.
And one of them is gonna attack me.
Yeah.
Which enemy? Which attack? Who knows?
You just gotta dodge, man. That's pretty much it. So,
cool How should I react? Jump! I can't.
Oh, right. So you have one way to react to it, for the most part, or a block, but you can't block from behind you, which you couldn't do in the original God of Wars either, I don't think. So you're gonna have to dodge. Like, what other thing could you do?
I guess I'll just roll.
Yeah.
And hope that I don't roll into something like a wall.
Well, yeah, you just have to be more mindful of your positioning, like in every other game that ever existed in the entire vast universe of everything. Make sure you don't position yourself at a wall.
Or another enemy that's running at me.
Okay, well then you would see that on the indication screen and you wouldn't roll that direction because it shows you where the enemies are.
It would be nice if I could see. There's also no universal block, so you can only block what's in front of you.
So, that's like a person. People can't block what's behind them.
Not good when so many attacks come from off-screen.
Oh no, you have to be more aware of your macro game. What a tragedy.
It creates a difficulty that comes from not being able to see what you're doing.
It creates a difficulty from being a little more realistic that you can't block shit that's like literally behind you.
And that is not the kind of difficulty that makes for a fun challenge in
I think it was perfectly fun.
a beat-em-up game. Survival horror? Sure, but not this. When I finish a fight in New God of War, I don't think, yeah, I did it, bring on the next fight.
I do, actually, especially in Ragnarok. I was eating it up. It's so much fun, especially in the harder mode. It's much more rewarding.
I think, God, I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore. Because there's no sense of focus.
Oh, so the game's just not for you, man. Like, you didn't like the game, like, because I guess it's too hard.
You're swinging the camera around the whole time, and it just gets exhausting keeping track of everyone.
You don't have to swing the camera around the whole time. You could just lock onto enemies. You could also funnel them into one spot. Why are we doing this? What's the point of this? You don't have to do that. You can just... you can literally corral the enemies and like gather them in front of you. Like you can do that. It's just another thing you have to do in the game. It's just ad management.
And by the way, what's with the HP of these enemies? They seem to take a little too long to kill in the early game. And I'm just hacking away, using the same attacks over and over. They take longer to kill because the action is now focused on fighting single enemies.
You're also missing half your attacks. You're not even locked on, which you don't have to be, but you're just kind of swinging.
Up close. But it's too much. It's boring. They need to die faster and maybe up the number of enemies. But then we
I don't think that this type of game does well with a lot of enemies, so I would disagree with that.
could end up with even more problems of enemies attacking you from off-screen. You can spend an eternity.
Yeah, so they make the enemies harder and less instead of more.
staring into the void of monotony as you're mashing the attack button and dodging against higher level enemies.
It's not, but the enemies are more in depth. Most of the enemies in the God of War, I mean, there's complexity in all the God of War games of like enemy types. Like you literally cannot stun the enemy he's fighting with like stun attacks. So like you have to play accordingly. I think if that was from Tobias F. He's not understanding that the old games were arcade games compared to a POV immersive storytelling with character maturing and fights are on one side. Yeah, sure. It's just a different game. You could just say like, hey, I'm not really resonating with this type of game by saying it's ruined. The story. The guy doesn't even like the story. He just hates the whole game because he's just crying about it. The one valid criticism he's had is that off-screen projectiles sometimes don't have an indicator. I never had that issue, so.
Hey, if you're having too much trouble in the fights, change it to normal. Well, that makes the game bad for a whole other reason. On normal difficulty, sure, the enemies have less HP, but your attacks do so much stun that the game literally does turn into a button masher. You don't have to do anything intelligent to defeat them. You can just screw around and make it—
Wait, you were just saying that the game is just a slog, and now you're saying it was actually kind of hard and there was depth to it? I don't understand. So you're saying it's really boring because there's no strategy, but now you're saying that it's too boring and there's no strategy if you lower the difficulty, which implies that the difficulty that's higher has more strategy to it. So
get through. And if the game eventually gets way too easy on hard, just imagine how normal is going to be. So either play normal and mash your way through, or play hard and make every fight a long, boring grind until you get overpowered. Pick your poison.
I like how he's like only maybe a half hour into the game and he's complaining about how bad it is. One of the things with like these newer games that have longer play times is that it takes longer for you to get more powerful at the game. Which is fine, by the way. I have no problem with that. It's just it's an adjustment. It sounds like he hasn't played games in like fucking 40 years.
As the game progresses and you level up, the enemies become pretty easy to cut through, and the game starts to trick you into thinking you're having fun. But you're not really. You think you're having fun because you're not as stressed. Around the time you get inside the mountain, the pacing of the game picks up, and I found some pretty decent fights there. But if you stop and think about it, you're not actually excited by what you're doing, and you don't feel like you're accomplishing anything because there's really no reward or motivation. And there's
like literally epic items on the floor here.
Health on the ground that you can always heal.
Who cares? It's fine. I think it's fine. It's for them to let you go into every fight with a full tank of health. It's just a different type of playstyle for the game.
And if you die, you come back with full health, even if you didn't start the fight with it.
Okay.
Don't worry about using all your runic powers. They recharge. Don't worry about finishing a fight with low health. Just die and come back with 100%. Don't worry about playing poorly.
You still have to do the fight again.
You earn the same XP regardless. This sucks.
This combo thing is just like really weird that she's so fixated on the combos. They weren't really that fun in the original game. It was like, oh, that's cool. Nobody ever really focused on the combos and started cumming their pants because they were combos. I don't know what he's talking about.
It sucks so much that the game has to constantly reward you with little pieces of loot to make you feel excited. The combat isn't enough on its own, and it should be. Instead of feeling good about saving resources and
it has like an RPG element to it, so it gives you loot. I don't understand.
Taking little damage. In this game, it's just, okay, the fight is over. I hope I get to pick up lots of shiny things on the ground. The brutal kills are still here, as they're a staple of the series, but they're not as satisfying because you feel too separated from them. They felt earned in the originals. You had to wear them down enough to get that floating icon.
You have to do the same thing in this game. What are you talking about?
And then you could go through the quick minigame to tear them apart. But violence wasn't the only reason. There was a purpose behind it all. Health or magic, area of effect explosions, or bonuses, or your combo meter. There was a lot of variety, and sometimes it granted multiple grab options. Isn't that so much more interesting than just mash the stun attacks until this boring enemy dies?
What?
Speaking of enemies, do you see anything in common with these designs? Did I mention that every one of them is just a dude? Pretty much. Dude.
Do you want to kill more girls? Is that the criticism in this?
Dude. Blue dude, yellow dude, archer dude, hammer dude, flying dude, Valkyrie.
Is he saying that there's not enough like female inclusion in the game?
Valkyrie dude, a dog, a wolf, a monkey.
You can say the same thing about the original games. I'm not really understanding the criticism here.
I miss the Cerberus, the Gorgons.
There's like trolls and giants in this game. What are you talking about?
Minotaurs. The Wraiths.
Okay, so you like those types of enemies. They have more beast creatures, but there's like, it's a different mythology pulling from different characters. And what?
The Centaurs. The Satyrs. The Cyclops. The Chimera that's part snake, part lion, part ram. All that fantastical creature design. I guess some more outlandish monsters would detract from the serious and mature tone they were going for.
It's a different mythology. It just happens to be different. I don't understand. Okay.
Even the bosses are just dudes. The trolls? Oh, the troll battle.
There you go. There's a there's a mythological creature for you.
This is when things start getting obviously bad.
Why?
This is supposed to feel like an epic fight, but my god is it boring. There's not enough attack variety to make this interesting. And he has so much HP.
I think that he just complains about everything. I don't think that he's gonna ever have a positive experience with this game. He doesn't want to.
That it feels like it goes on
He's too much like comparison brained. He's never gonna enjoy it.
forever. What's worse is that this troll fight is copy-pasted all through the game over and over and over.
That's like a reasonable criticism. Like there is a lot of that troll fight. Like for sure, I remember playing the game and I felt like there could have been better boss variety. For sure. I mean, I can agree with that as well. That's fine. There's a decent criticism.
Every time he
That's what they fixed in the second God of War, like or in God of War Ragnarok. There's more of a boss variety.
shows up in whatever form, you just think, God, really? This game suffers from a severe lack of interesting enemies and boss encounters. The boss fights are mediocre to poor.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I thought Boulder was fantastic. One of my favorite fights in the entire series.
The final fight is epic at times, even if it revolves around a dull story.
The story is not dull at all. I don't even know how to talk to you if you think it's dull. It's a really good story. It's like a maturing story. He grows up. He changes. His character becomes more complex. He has more emotional complexities. It's interesting. It's engaging. It resonates with people who have gotten older and more mature as people, and like have different relationships with like Kratos, but so or like identifying relationships with him.
Thor's sons are kind of fun. The dragon is meh. You hack at his toes and throw balls at him.
Okay.
It's more of a set piece than a boss fight. And it's not like the dragon is an antagonist of the story. It's just a random monster that you gotta fight.
Not really random. There's a whole lore to it. It used to be like a dwarf. And it's trying to like kill, I think it used to be a dwarf. Like some dragons were just dwarves that were like morphed. Dwarf morphed, right? And they're trying to kill, I think it's Sindri at that point. So there's a motivation there.
Technically impressive, yes, but really nothing of consequence to the story. And this wouldn't have been so bad if there'd been some awesome fights around this. But no, this dragon fight should have felt huge like Kronos or the Colossus.
This dragon fight's more involved than Kronos. Kronos in God of War 3 was like kind of not super involved. It was visually awesome, but there wasn't like a whole lot going on there.
These boss fights suck. It's just a bunch of troll clones and bosses that are overly simple and leave the action for the cutscenes.
Okay.
It's either a guy my size or something so big that it's impractical to actually fight.
What? You just talked about where the fights are like Kronos. You're the size of half of Kronos' thumb. What is he talking? This criticism is stupid. It doesn't even make sense. What are you talking about? Wait, some of the bosses are too big, so it doesn't make sense. The entirety of the original God of Wars was all massive boss fights. What the fuck is he talking about?
After 20 hours of this game, you finally have another confrontation with Baldur, and instead of designing a good fight,
it took you 20 hours? Okay.
It's literally just 2 full minutes of mashing R1.
That's not true at all. This is like a very small section of the fight. He's full of shit.
And turning left and right. It's nothing.
This is not even maybe 5% of the fight. This is just like the intro to the fight, I'm pretty sure, or the end of it. I don't really remember.
But at this point, are you surprised? There's no emotional connection to any of these boss fights either.
That's not true at all if you were paying attention to the story. What are you talking about?
Or any fight in the entire game for that matter. There are no epic bone-chilling moments like these.
I am not the same man you found that day. The monster you've created has returned to kill you.
I mean, I will be honest with you. I think the new voice acting is better, just to be clear. But hey.
God after God will deny you, Kratos. They will protect Zeus. Zeus must live so that Olympus will prevail.
If all on Olympus will deny me my vengeance, then all on Olympus will die.
Not for nothing. This isn't particularly deep storylines. This is like, hey, if Zeus dies, everything goes away. Oh no. Like that's not bad. It's just different. I don't really understand. There's much more complexity in the new game, and they do a much better job of like fleshing out characters and making you like them, like Mimir and even Atreus. He's not unlikable. He's a little annoying, but he's a kid, you know?
Care less about this mother and son drama that has nothing to do with me.
His mother died. It's not drama, and it's Kratos. None of this has anything to do with you. You're a person. You're playing Kratos' story, and his wife died, and he loves his wife, and she's dead now, and he's sad about it. And then
especially when it's told to me in little tiny fragments with many hours between them.
So first of all, that's not even true. You must have it on mute. That's not how that works at all. It doesn't. It's not told in tiny fragments. It's told to you. It's told to you over a long time, but not in tiny fragments. Every single character interaction is part of the story. When you're just traveling, the characters are talking to you and to each other and telling stories about the game and the world around them. That's not true at all. What are you talking about? Did you play the game on mute? I don't really understand what you're talking about.
I'm just killing these enemies because they're in my way. Oh.
What?
Wait, finally. After traversing this dreary underworld level, do I get to fight that giant death bird? Do I?
No, apparently, the little lore to that, they wanted to have you fight that bird, but they didn't have enough time or for the budget, because they didn't have a massive budget, because Ascension was kind of a flop, so they didn't get as much of a budget as they kind of wanted to revamp the series, because Ascension was a flop. It was terrible, and it did have a very negative impact on the series. Let's be absolutely fucking real here.
Why? No, screw you. Here's another troll.
Does the XP in the game amount to anything, like earning unlockable skills cosmetics for what? And what game are you talking about?
So, I'm annoyed, I'm bored, and I'm frustrated. And you know what else?
It sounds like you have TikTok autism or something. Like, it's like, not to be rude, but like, if you're bored, it just sounds like you don't have an attention span, and like you maybe need Subway Surfers playing in the background while you're playing video games or something.
You know what makes this so much worse?
No.
This little puñetas right here. He will not shut up. You know what the original...
I thought he was fine. It was not as good in Ragnarok because like you had to play as him, but I thought he was fine. He was an angsty kid going through puberty, and that's part of his story, is him going through puberty. I thought it was fine. People complained about him, and that's fine if you had an issue with it. I thought he was fine. Like, I thought it was a decent story. I thought it was a good character. I like Atreus. He's an annoying kid. He's a kid. He's just literally just a kid. Like, that's what it is.
Original God of War series really needed? An 8-year-old boy incessantly...
He's like 12, but...
screaming, "Father, look out! Behind you! Find a healing stone!" And
it's really not that annoying. The more annoying that's at all, nobody complained about this. The annoying part is, especially God of War Ragnarok, when it was too much complaining. When there was too much like yelling at you and chirping at you when you were trying to do a puzzle. That part was annoying.
Never f***ing stops. His voice enters your brain like a parasite, and you start playing sloppier because you're annoyed by him on top of the awful, boring combat.
I didn't have that problem.
On my first playthrough, I was playing on hard, so I was having to repeat a lot.
Like, it's annoying when you're tilting because you're getting killed when Amir or Atreus talk to you, but the character in and of itself isn't like bad. Are we doing... What the fuck are we doing?
The fights in the early game, and his complaining was so annoying that before every fight, I had to go into the option menu, turn the dialogue volume all the way
Oh, so you didn't listen to the dialogue, so they've ruined the experience of the game for you.
Down, just so I could fight in peace.
Okay, so this guy just missed the key moments of the game and storytelling because he turned the dialogue off. Okay.
And then, after the fight, go back to the menu, turn it back up.
You didn't do this. You're just saying you did this. This guy was probably losing a lot, which is a relatable experience. He was probably losing a lot, and then he felt like he had to turn it off because it was tilting him. That's what it was. This guy was struggling with the game, and he was getting pissed when he would die in the same fight over and over again, even though he got his full health back, but it didn't miraculously make the game instantaneously easy. It took him an extra 5 hours to beat this game, by the way. I beat the game in 15 hours on normal on the playthrough that I did last. I wanted to play Ragnarok on the hardest difficulty because I replayed it to get up to that point, which I did. But it takes me 15 hours to beat. So it took him an extra 5 hours to beat the game because he played it on a harder difficulty. And he was getting tilted, so he turned the dialogue off. That's what happened. But he's complaining that it's too easy because you get all your health back. That makes it too easy, but you're losing so much that you've added 25 or 33% onto your playtime. That's so interesting to happen. Or he added more stuff onto his playtime because he did side bonus quests, which means that he was enjoying the game so much that he decided to do additional stuff. There's really no two ways about it. So are you just hating to hate? Or maybe can you close my door? Love you.
So I don't miss the story, because Kratos and Atreus talk all the f***ing time.
Yes, it's a paced out game, so they wanted them to, they're talking as part of the game, as part of the storytelling.
About dumb shit that I don't care about.
It's about the story they talk about. What?
I don't like you, kid. Go away!
Okay.
For the love of God, Santa Monica Studios, please give us a patch with a separate option to mute the boy during combat. It's not like we need to worry about protecting him. He's just there for us to spam his arrows. Mindlessly, by the way. The electric arrows turn the game's combat into a complete joke. These things get so out of control that every encounter is just activate electric spell, shoot electric arrows, use runic attacks, and clean.
I mean, every God of War is just using your spells, using your attacks, using your combo. You can say that about any game. What do you want from the game that I don't really understand?
Clean up the rest. Look at this. I'm playing on hard, and all I have to do is spam the electric arrows and mash.
Again, it took this guy an extra 5 hours to beat the game because of how much he was losing, or he liked it so much he did a bunch of the bonus stuff and he's lying. So when he says, it was so easy, this is ridiculous, this guy got fucking tanked out over and over again. What is he talking about?
Attacks, and nearly every encounter turns into a broken mess. The only way around
This
this
guy's just lying. It's fucking crazy. Oh, fuck.
is to play on the expert difficulty, which is a living nightmare for the first few sections. It eventually delivers a few more good fights, but then degenerates into the same spam fest for the most part.
This guy took so long to beat the game, and he's pretending that it was too easy for him. It's just fucking laughable.
Great design, guys.
Okay.
Atreus is even worse because he doesn't talk like he belongs in this game.
What?
This is supposed to be set in Old Norse mythology, the times of Odin and Thor, but Atreus' English is way too modern.
That's what you get!
Boy,
Take that? That's what you get?
Oh. Is this really like your issue? Okay.
There's no way anyone would say that. There's no way the son of Kratos would speak like that.
What?
This kid even says, what?
Well, if you actually pay attention to the game, you'd realize that Kratos was an emotionally absent father and didn't do a whole lot raising his kid up until this point. So it actually would, like, if you're saying that it's not really Kratos' kid, well, then that they're doing the right job telling the story that they wanted to tell, because Kratos was not a particularly emotionally available father. It's like a pretty big aspect of the original game, and it's part of what makes it so satisfying when it gets to the end. Especially when Kratos goes from calling him boy to actually calling him Atreus.
Whatever when he gets pissy.
Whatever.
He's a fucking kid, of course he's gonna get pissy.
It says, don't wake him. Whatever.
Well, this is when Atreus was starting to get entitled because he found out that he was a god, and he starts acting like a piece of shit. And he's like, whatever, I don't care, people are dying. It's part of the story if you paid attention to it. So, okay.
I swear this kid is about to pull out a skateboard and sunglasses.
Okay.
He starts mocking the way Kratos talks, and basically turns Kratos into a joke himself. Because
Not really, it's the kid getting pissed off. What are you talking about?
Kratos is so one note through the entire game that he's like a parody.
He barely talked in the original trilogy. I don't know what you're talking about. That's actually very normal for him.
Let me guess. You're gonna be smug and say you told me we shouldn't get involved.
Boy, read this.
I said, the only time you care to talk to me is when you need me to translate for you. If Mom was
if
here...
your mother was still alive, we would not beat at all.
In the original, he had a much wider expression of emotion. Here he's
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh like that. Do you have to have a fucking disability or something? Sorry, I had to stop making fun of people with disabilities because this guy's just an idiot. Kratos was the most one-dimensional, angry, grunting, screaming fuck in the original games that ever could have existed. And by the way, I was cool with that. I liked that about Kratos. In fact, one of the complaints I had about God of War 3 is that he just started talking more, and it was like jarring and weird because it didn't really make sense. And the game took an emotional turn that didn't really feel like it belonged to God of War 3. But again, God of War 3 was still solid. It just, I felt like there were some aspects of it that bothered me. He had no depth in God of War 1, in the original God of Wars. What the fuck are you talking about? There was no depth to Kratos. He was an angry, grunting fuck that would constantly destroy things because he was angry and then grunting. By the way, not a bad character. He has a much wider range of emotions, or array of emotions in the newer games. What the fuck are you talking about? The whole game is about him maturing as a person and becoming a little bit more empathetic and accepting. What are you talking about?
He's just monotone and somber from beginning to end.
This guy's a fucking moron.
What are you doing, boy? There comes a moment where the kid almost becomes tolerable, but once he learns that he's part god...
You were just referencing when he turned part god.
Oh my god, he becomes insufferable.
That's the point. He's supposed to become insufferable. It's because he just learned that he was a god and that he had he felt entitled and started diminishing the value of human life and going into a way that Kratos was going. Remember, Kratos was killing people for fun. He killed that boat captain in the first game for fun. He didn't have to kill the majority of the people. They added into the original games where you would kill civilians, random civilians that you were supposed to be helping, by the way, for health. That's part of the game. It shows that Kratos doesn't care about human life. He thinks he's better than everybody. I mean, this game is about how Kratos regrets a lot of his actions of the past. And his kid going into that same direction didn't make him happy, and so he didn't like that. I mean, how did you not get any of this from the game?
Odin's right. We are a threat. Enough about Odin and his whole stupid family. Nobody cared about him anyways. What's the difference?
He just killed a kid. Killed a god.
There are consequences to killing a god!
Do you hear me?
I heard you, and these are not subjects for discussion. Do not push me, boy.
Fine.
Watch your tone, boy.
Whatever.
God, I can't express how much I hate this kid.
Why? It was a good story.
And it boggles my mind that so many publications insist that there's a deep emotional bond between Kratos and Atreus.
There is. You literally play through it. In the beginning of the game, Atreus, or Kratos, was an emotionally absent father that barely raised his kid in any meaningful way. He didn't even train the kid for combat up until this point. This is what him like really starting to train him for combat. The mom was the one that taught Atreus to hunt, which is why he's even using a bow in the first place. And by the end of the game, you stop calling him boy and you start calling him Atreus, and you start being more honest and open with him and trying to teach him and guide him and make him ready to take care of himself when you inevitably die. And that's what Kratos' entire, like, the arc is fantastic. It's a great story. That was the best part about it. It was really honed in on building their relationship in a positive and productive way more than anything else. And it adds additional layers because Baldur, the main enemy, is actually the son of Freya, which is like your biggest ally in that game. And you ended up killing him. And then that like sends them into a spiral when it comes to their relationship, and that sets up for the second game. And again, I think that the story was better told in the first game than Ragnarok. Ragnarok was still really good. Like, I think God of War 2018 was like an S tier game, and I think Ragnarok's like an A tier game. So yeah, I mean, I think that Ragnarok plays better. I think it's a little bit more fun to play. I think that they kind of like dealt with a couple of the issues, but outside of that, the story wise is so much better portrayed in the first game. 2018.
That this game has a moving emotional story.
It does.
The original had an emotional story.
It was emotional, but it wasn't as connected emotional. It was really interesting. It was compelling, and it was like provocative. You're like, damn, this is brutal. But like in this game, you really feel it because you're constantly hearing the characters and you're getting their personalities through every moment of the game.
The PSP,
and he hasn't even talked about fucking Atreus yet. I mean, Mimir. Now he's gonna go reference like, pushing yourself away from Calliope in the PSP game.
Game Chains of Olympus had an emotional story. It's emotional when Athena dies at your hands.
That's not Chains of Olympus, but okay.
It's emotional when Kratos realizes he's doomed to forever remember his past.
Sure, that's emotional. They're both emotional in different ways.
It's emotional when you finally beat the living shit out of Zeus.
Just to be clear, this is not an emotional scene, and it's boring. I'm just going to say, at the end of God of War 3 was shit, right? Like, we have to acknowledge that. It turned into this weird, hope-filled story that made no sense. The Pandora's box angle releasing, making the gods evil made no sense. It was actually bad. It wasn't fun or interesting or productive. It was like it was a bad part of the game. They did a bad job with the end of 3. It could have done. They just needed to remove that part. They needed to not over justify Kratos' anger at Zeus. They just needed to make it happen as it was, because Kratos was perfectly angry at Zeus rather. But they made this weird angle. It removed the emotion from the game because it was so bad. God of War 3's story just went from amazing to mediocre with that implementation. So to sit here and praise it when it's not even very good in and of itself, it ends in such a mediocre way, is just ridiculous. It's corny. Yeah, it's corny. Play God of War 3. Play 1, 2, and 3 in order, and God of War 3 is fucking corny. It's corny as shit, and it's lazy, and the writing became so like bland at the end. We were watching like a fucking Saturday morning cartoon special, and it didn't have to be like that. They over justified his actions with the whole hope angle and the gods are evil now because you released Pandora's box. It didn't need to happen. It was lazy. It was a rehashing of a story from God of War 1, and it didn't make anybody go, "Wow, this is great." It was boring. It was stupid. The game was fantastic. It's the most fun God of War, I think. Play style wise, there were some issues with the play style in God of War 3. Some of the enemies had too much health. Like the Siren had too much health. And the problem from a game design perspective of the Siren having too much health is because in God of War 3, when you kill the Siren, you could snap her back and make her do AoE damage. But if she's the last thing alive at the end, then what the fuck is the point of even being able to do that? Right? So there are flaws, which he's not acknowledging because he probably didn't play them since he was like a kid. And so he doesn't really know what the flaws are because he wasn't playing it from a mature perspective. So he was playing it from a point of nostalgia as if it was perfect and nothing wrong with that. And he's sitting here fucking like talking to us like he knows what the fuck he's talking about. What?
For turning his back on you, his son. But this little shit that doesn't even speak like a person from this world, that moans and complains constantly, screams at me all the time while I try to fight, that Kratos just calls boy for 40 hours? Get the fuck out of here. The only moments of real feeling in this game are the moments when Kratos is reflecting on his experiences from the other games. I haven't even talked about the story yet, because I don't want to. I can barely remember it.
Because you didn't play the game in any meaningful capacity. I would honestly wouldn't even doubt that you didn't play it.
There are moments, sure, where you get drawn in. I mean, it's a well-crafted game, so that's going to happen. The scene where Kratos is finally alone and reflecting silently on his past is truly captivating. But these moments are few and far between. You spend way more time just running favors for people, which is so Kratos, am I right? Go
Well, I mean, he's a different version of him. Oh, I guess where nobody's doing the mechanic.
find something for this guy.
Okay.
Go find something for this other guy.
You don't have to do those. Those are bonus missions, and it's showing that Kratos is becoming slightly more empathetic. And also, part of the game is getting softened up and being impacted by your wife, Faye. So
You're from my captain and crew. I believe they are still under the water. Will you find them
it also has RPG elements.
for me?
And in
The main
many instances, like Atreus, like we should help this guy, and you're like, okay, fine, whatever.
Characters are just as uninteresting as the faceless spirits in the side quests. The main boss fight in the beginning, the one you beat by mashing attack and watching long cutscenes and transitions.
It's the first fight. The first fight of Poseidon in the God of War 3 is also like button mashing nonsense as well. You're overpowered. You don't lose your abilities yet, so they make it like easy, which makes sense. It's an introductory boss fight. Why would the introductory boss fight in God of War in any game be hard? Just explain that to me. Why would it be hard, difficult, or complicated? It's an introductory boss fight.
Is against a god that doesn't feel pain because his mother, the lady in the woods, blessed him with some kind of invulnerability and immunity to pain.
You're aware that just like in God of War, the original God of Wars, this is calling upon a different mythology, right?
And he really wants to feel again. And that's about it, really.
So, what? This guy's like belittle. This is the mythology of Norse mythology, just like the other mythologies have they're recalling onto those characters. And I actually thought it was incredible that Freya wanted to protect her kids so bad. And by the way, it fits with the theme of the original God of Wars as well, but this guy doesn't play video. Like, he never really played the games and absorbed it. Because a lot of the original God of Wars, if you've actually played through them, it's a lot of conversations about trying to avoid prophecy. And so, like, in the prequel, I think it's Ghost of Sparta, they take Deimos because he has a mark on his face, and there's a prophecy that Zeus is told that there's going to be a marked person is going to, overthrow Olympus, right? And so they take him to try to avoid that prophecy. But what happens? Kratos gets a mark on him. He gets a tattoo in the same way that his brother's natural, discoloration of his pigmentation happened, and the prophecy is fulfilled anyway. I believe there's a prophecy that the God of War will destroy Olympus. So what do? They stop the God of War. But then what happens? Kratos becomes God of War, and he shuts down Olympus. The whole game is about prophecies, these self-fulfilling prophecies of trying so hard to deflect from these prophecies that they end up happening anyway, right? That's the whole thing. And this is a continuation of that theme because a lot of mythologies have that theme. Freya makes Balder immune to pain because she had this, I think it was the prophecy that her son would die, right? But then he lost all feeling of anything. He became immortal. He lost all feeling of anything, and he ends up resenting her because he can't feel anything. Food doesn't taste good. Sex doesn't feel good. He doesn't have any emotional connections to people, any meaningful capacity, and it ruins the relationship that she has with him. And like, it's really emotional when he punches Atreus and just happens to have the mistletoe bound to him. He was using it as like a tie off because like his shirt broke or something, and I think it was actually his quiver. And he starts to feel pain, and he's like, oh my god, this feels so good. This is such an emotional release when you get that, especially when you go through Helheim at a certain point, and you're seeing the story. It's really through flashbacks of Freya and Balder, having this interaction about how he hates that she cursed him, right? So when you say, like, I don't think that you have any understanding of the mythologies or the games in of themselves. You didn't even go into it and listen to all the story that was being portrayed to you and told to you and referenced to you and inferred to you through different emotional communications. You just went in here and you turned it off and you just fucking brain deaded your way through it. You didn't give the story a chance. You don't even know what you're talking about. I can belittle any part of the story down. Oh, Kratos wanted to kill himself at the game because like he did a bad thing. He killed his family or whatever because like he was you can use a tone and a dismissive tone to make anything seem like small and trivial like you're doing here, but the emotional build up to this point was fucking insane. What are you talking about? I absolutely loved this fight. I thought it was one of the best fights in God of War from an emotional build up perspective and the release. It was fantastic. It was visually stimulating. It was pretty fun to play, but it was like story wise stimulating. It was visually stimulating. It was great. So I don't know what you're talking about. I just don't think you ever played these games before. I don't really know. Like, you don't seem to understand the depth of any story at all.
Nothing Kratos can do anything about, and the rest of it is just mythology and world building. We don't really get to know the characters in this game well. He tries to kill his...
Yes, you do. You get to know them better than in any of the other games. You didn't play the game. You literally said that you turned off the sound. Like, there's no way that you got anything through the game.
Mom, Kratos stops him, then you fight him. And these characters barely have any presence in the game at all. They disappear for hours. It's also...
It's a long game.
Scattered.
They do not concern us.
Exactly. Nothing concerns me. I'm as interested in what's going on as Kratos is, which is to say, not at all.
What?
Why is Kratos even here? I'm just trying to spread the ashes of my second wife from the highest mountain with my kid. Leave me out of your boring family drama.
That is family drama, no? Also, like, you're there because his wife put him on a path to doing this. She's like, go spread my ashes on the highest point in all the realms. So they go to the highest point of what they think is all the realms. But guess who's there? Mimir, right? Which I think she wanted Kratos and Atreus to meet Mimir to help them guide the path, because they were actually friends. There's a lot of story here, just so you guys know, right? And they go there, and he's like, "Hey, this isn't the highest point in the entire in anything. It's actually in Jotunheim, so they have to go there." And then they end up going on this journey because, like, really, his wife put him on this journey, the wife that he loved quite a bit, right? So, what are you talking about? And like, the whole game is playing Kratos' character. I don't really understand like the dismissive tone here.
I'm on my own boring adventure, an adventure through some of the most boring levels ever. While many
They were visually great. What are you talking about?
locations are well structured and intricate and impressive for a bit, I mean, how could you not be immediately impressed by the sights in this game? They quickly lose their charm.
Why?
Water, rocks, grass, trees,
Why are we not doing
mud,
this?
for hours. I'm so tired of walking around and rowing boats. On your first playthrough, if you're exploring all the hidden areas and dying frequently, you're going to be looking at rocks and water for hours and hours.
So if you die a lot, you're gonna have to repeat the areas that you died on.
Spread.
Oh wow, who would have thought that? That's crazy, brother.
And once you finally get to Alfheim, it's the same
This guy
thing.
doing this
The change
stuff.
of worlds is super refreshing when you finally get there. But this too fades fast as you realize it's just another color of rocks and water and more
That's what everything is, just different colors of rocks and water. What?
boring structures from the same camera angle, the same auto-climbing and unsatisfying combat.
That's just your opinion, man. Sorry.
Levels
I
are
don't know.
filled with long, drawn-out sections of walking around, climbing, carrying things, finding pathways. Jump through this water wheel by mashing the interact button. Can't miss time to jump and die. Just mash it until Kratos auto-jumps.
Okay.
But yeah,
But again, it took this guy 30. It took this guy like 5 extra hours to beat because he was doing so well at it.
you go 10, 15, 20 minutes without a fight, much less a good one. It's another way the game tricks you into thinking the combat is fun. They knew it was boring and that you'd realize it if there were a lot of fights. So they put
I mean, I found myself wanting to. Honestly, I think that the combat in 2018 and Ragnarok are better than the original games, generally speaking. I had more fun playing these on my second playthrough, which I did this year. I played through literally everything, even Ascension. I probably should have mentioned at the beginning of the video. I had more fun. I wanted to play these games more. Frankly, I found myself bored of 1 and 2. I found myself starting to have a lot more fun in God of War 3. I should have put them on hard difficulties. I think that's part of it. But and then I found myself having fun in 2018 and the most fun in Ragnarok. And again, that's probably because I finally put the difficulty up, and so it was more stimulating and a little more engaging. But like, yeah, I mean, these games are fun.
put an eternity of walking and rowing boats between them, so you're excited to finally kill something. But you quickly become so powerful.
So then why? So then again, either you struggled really hard and you lost a lot in these games that added 5 hours onto the playtime, or you were doing the side missions because you were having so much fun with the game. There's no in between.
that the bland combat areas might as well not even be there. You'll find plenty of puzzles, and while a couple of them are good, get ready to do the same puzzle again and again.
So God of War, the original one is too. They're puzzles. You do the same thing pretty much over and over again. You know, like you go grab a thing, you put it in somewhere else, or you go and you put rocks in a formation. It's okay.
Nearly every single puzzle in this
You turn around a crossbow and you shoot it. They're good puzzles, by the way. I like them. It's just like they're not exactly the most complicated things in the entire fucking world.
Game.
You go get a thing and you put it in a crack in a wall. Like, get a lever, put it in here. It's the same thing. The entire, like, what are you talking about?
is just find the
But the Pandora's box puzzle was fucking awesome. Like, it was very cool and intricate. But like, it's this, like, outside of that, like 2 and 3 didn't have Pandora's box. Like, it's just a different game with different aspects of puzzle. Like, it's a different game. That's all it is.
hidden thing and throw your axe at it or shoot it. Cans to open chests. Stones to free the dragon, where you run around aimlessly looking for the right rocks to break, which could be anywhere. The game comes to a screeching halt as you wander around looking into the distance trying to find these things. And by the 10th time you've done it, you'll start losing your mind.
This guy played all the bonus missions. I don't understand. I thought you hated the game. Why are you doing bonus missions then?
Could they not come up with anything better than this? The game itself knows this. Remember in The Last of Us, after like the 4th
No.
time that you have to find a way to cross the river? Ellie jokes about the repetitiveness of the puzzles. Here, Atreus does the same thing.
Greatest man or tallest tree begins as any more than... Yeah, it's easy. Stupid riddles.
Being meta and joking about your repetitive puzzle design doesn't make it any better. Just make better puzzles. Hit the
This guy
cans,
found
shoot the
builds.
exploding things to free the chests. But
Huh.
that introduces another problem I have.
try
So
that.
many chests and items that it's very common for this to happen. You find yourself in an area with some kind of puzzle. Here,
Okay.
you have to move
Oh, I
the
remember this puzzle. It's actually pretty cool.
glowing torch to different spots in less than 10 seconds each move. You have to explore this entire area looking for these transfer points, and then babysit this thing to each one.
Yes.
It's easy to get disoriented because, well, there's no camera direction. You're spinning the camera all over the place.
Yeah, you have control over your own camera.
After seriously 5 minutes of running around these rocks and moving the torch, you finally get it to this door. Another chest.
Yep, and this is where you get a new runic attack.
Okay, give me something good. Oh.
Oh, okay. This is an upgrade to your. This is an upgrade to your chains of the Blaze of Chaos.
Another grip for my blades.
Oh, it's a grip. Oh, okay. It's a grip for your blades. Sorry, I thought it was something else. Who cares? It's a grip for your blades, and it's an epic grip for your blades, and it can have an impact on the story or your playstyle, rather. Okay.
It's a good one, but I like the one I'm using, so I've just wasted my
So then don't use it.
time.
Oh, sorry. You found something you didn't necessarily need. Okay, that's how RPG games work. Thank you so much for the small gut from Dakota Win. For 5 months. You should watch the H3 vs. Jimmy Lee video. Oh, what is it?
Thanks, game. Here's what they could have done. Enter an area and see that the goal of this puzzle is whatever thing. Axe pummel of blah blah blah, granting cooldown to your runic attacks.
Why would you know that? It's inside of a chest. That would remove the immersion of the game because you knew what it was.
And then you could say, oh, hey, that sounds pretty good. I feel that it's worth the next 10 minutes of my time screwing around with this puzzle.
It sounds like you want to be spoon-fed. Like, I don't understand. It wants you to do a thing. You don't have to do it. You decided to do an optional puzzle that you didn't need to do to try to get something, and it wasn't something that worked out. This is how RPGs work. Oh, there might be a thing in that chest. Let's see if it's worth doing. It's called a gamble. It's a risk. It also makes it like when you get something you need more fun. I'm literally playing World of Warcraft the whole time, not getting loot. Once you do, it's like, wow, this was cool. I finally got what I wanted. This is really awesome.
You know what game did this perfectly?
Is this Doom? I mean, Doom was fine. I played like whatever 2016 or something, or 2018, or I think it's 2016. It was fine. It just doesn't resonate with me. It's not my kind of game. Like, this makes sense that you like games that Doom is very fast-paced, very minimal story, very like rush, charge, gory. That's cool, and that's fine that you like that. That's what the God of War original was also, and like you resonate with those games. You didn't like this game because it was slower. It requires an attention span. You have to pay attention to the characters. You have to get emotionally invested, and you just don't have the capacity or ability to do that because you're like lazy, and that's okay. It just wasn't a game for you, and your complaints are all terrible. There are very few reasonable arguments here, other than like, hey, you know, I just didn't really like the game. All right, let's just mute this for a little bit as he shows us the Doom game that he liked a lot. Hey guys, you know what I like? Doom.
Doom 2016.
Cool.
When you find the rune challenges, it immediately tells you what you'll win if you complete it.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this. This is not the same. This is actually not a God of War game. I don't know if you knew that.
Because it could take you a while to get through it, and they don't want to interrupt the flow of the game.
Okay, and that's how this game plays. That's cool that they do that. You don't need to do that in God of War.
Right from the beginning, you can say, move faster for a short time after performing a glory kill. Nah, I think I'll pass. And then move on with the game. That's how you do it. So you don't spend an eternity completing a puzzle or challenge just to get something you don't want. In God of War, you have to do all these puzzles if you want to find the stuff you want, and suffer through plenty of stuff that you don't.
Oh, no.
I swear, look at all these axe pummels I've found.
It's okay. Stop doing that then.
And I've found all these light runic attacks. I can only use one.
Like, you know for a fact that in the, I forget what they're called, but the chests that require the three, to destroy the three symbols, you know that's going to either be health or rage increase. Everything else is going to be equipment increases. So then operate accordingly and just don't open these things up to get all these attacks if you're satisfied with what you have. It's that simple.
Look at all these enchantments. Jesus Christ, I can only have like 3 or 4 of these equipped at any one time.
Okay.
I haven't used even 90% of these things.
So
they're all so
collecting them.
shitty or so specific as to make them
So stop doing the side puzzles to get them. It's an RPG game. I don't know what you're talking about.
virtually useless.
Or it has those elements in it.
Reduce poison damage?
Those are called the Nornir chests? Okay.
You almost never get poisoned in this game.
Okay.
Reduce burn damage? You almost never get burned in this game. And by the time you get them, you're already so powerful that they're obsolete. Am I expected to go into my inventory
I'm pretty sure you're playing on normal, so.
and change my enchantments and my rune attacks for every fight?
I mean, if you're struggling with the fight, I imagine you might. Also, these probably exist more for the after game. Once the game is over, very difficult fights that have fire damage or poison damage that you might need these on. It's the same thing as like in World of Warcraft, where you have resistances, and sometimes those are relevant. Not so much in the new games, but in the older games, it adds like a level of complexity. You might have to have a play style. You get more resources to be able to make a different fight different, and tackle it in a different capacity when it gets harder. This game isn't just about the experience of going through it. It's also it's also a lot about the experience after you get through it too. That is a big part of the game. So
Just make Kratos take less fire and poison damage as a way to level up.
or don't do that because it removes the depth, like an aspect of the depth of the game, and people don't necessarily want that.
Don't make me equip all this stuff. You are driving me insane.
Okay.
But hey, It looks nice, right? Man, this game is a technical marvel. It's
It
gorgeous
looks good.
and feels alive. I've never seen animations so lifelike. It's too bad the gameplay and the story don't live up to the same standard.
They do, but it's
It's
okay. They don't
beautiful.
like it.
And the game insists that you acknowledge that fact. It
What?
doesn't want you to not see how good it looks.
Move.
I don't understand. So just to be clear, this isn't an actual criticism that he has, and the reason that I'm saying that is because this motherfucker was talking about how he loves the fixed camera angle earlier, because the fixed camera angle showed off how beautiful the scenery was, and you'd see like these really cool big ass like gods in the background and aspects in the background, which is, by the way, cool. But then you get upset when they show you the visuals in this game. It doesn't make any sense. He's just complaining to complain. His arguments aren't consistent. You can't say that one of the great parts about the original God of Wars is that they would have beautiful scenery that they would show in your face by like forcing you to see it through the camera, which is not a bad thing, and then complain that they would force you to see this through the camera. It doesn't make any sense. Like, how do you have both of those complaints at the same time?
Leading to moments where the game forces you to walk. Let's carry a tree. Let's carry a pig. Look at this turtle. We spent so long making this turtle. Look at it. Hey,
Oh.
I'm Kratos.
I mean, it's a pretty cool turtle.
You don't tell me what to look at. You don't tell me that I can't run in this part. The old games made me feel like I was Kratos. This one
Okay.
just makes me feel like I'm controlling him.
Move.
I would. Okay. Okay.
And
I mean, I had the opposite of impact, but okay, that's cool, man.
controlling him slowly. Slowly climbing up walls when we used to fly up them. You could double jump and catch the wall, leap up to the ledge and slide down and be done with it. Here, you just have to press the interact button to latch on and hold up and wait. Which, believe me, gets old after you've climbed about 3 times.
The climbing can be a little slow. That's fine criticism.
You may think I'm nitpicking, but I'm not. This game is filled with an infuriating amount of brain-dead climbing. Just hold up and wait. Can't jump up or slide down. Just another instance of player agency being stripped away from us in favor of this cinematic crap. And this
Cinematic crap. This guy really just does not like story.
seemingly minor change led to the single most frustrating time I had in the entire game, my first
What's that?
playthrough. Enter this part of Midgard
Wait, your first playthrough? How many times did you play it through? You're talking about how bad the game is. You played it multiple times?
by the Hellwalker quest and go into the cave.
This guy played the game multiple times. He's talking about how bad it was? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense.
Hold up slowly to climb the walls, climb down the chain, and 2 powerful wolvers appear. You'll probably lose due to not being highly upgraded and not understanding how to fight them. And the fight is
Yes. The worst part of any game, when you find a new enemy that you have to learn to play better. Having to use tactics to play better. What a terrible game.
in a very constricted area. And if you die, you go back
Special
to the
coming.
bottom of the wall. You go back to the bottom of the wall, and even though I like
I'm already talking about like the deaths in the original God of Wars is more punishing than this. Why is this a criticism you have? Didn't you want more punishing, less quality of life? You were complaining about quality of life, getting your health refilled at the end. I don't know when you would.
to stick
Get
out a
through
tough
something.
fight for as long as it takes, I was losing my mind repeatedly climbing up. It's what I feared the most about dying. Climbing again. There came a point where I just said,
wiping
no,
it.
I am not climbing that wall again. Which brings me, finally, to the challenge realms, which are awful. Niflheim must be the worst idea in the game.
I mean, I didn't really play Niflheim, so I don't really know. But what was your problem with them? What am I doing compared to this other guy?
Hours of tedious, boring resource grinding.
Oh, I'm pretty close.
Where
to
you
him.
repeatedly
Nice.
open chests, hundreds of them, to unlock armor that you don't even need anymore. And then
Well, why don't you need them anymore?
there's the Muspelheim battle trials, which are either frustrating and boring, or comically easy and boring.
So don't play
Special
them.
coming.
They're trials. They're extra stuff for the end of the game. For somebody who hates this game, he sure played a lot of it. I hated this game. I 100%ed this game that I hate. I played it through twice. It was so bad. Why did you play it so much if you hated it?
Depending on how bad you've broken the game through the terrible RPG-style leveling system. It's also a perfect example of how this game values immersion over gameplay. The original
not
series
true,
also
but-
had these challenges, remember? And not only were they more fun and interesting, but you could easily access them from the menu. Want to play a specific trial? Just click it and it starts.
Oh no, you have to go to a world. Hey guys, this game is not more immersive. By the way, in the original God of War, hey guys, the original God of War, those were more immersive. All I had to do was go to a menu and click on something, and I was able to do it. This game that makes you go to a new world through a traveling system, that's not immersive. That's literally immersion. Making you walk to a place is an immersive experience. That's the whole point. Making you move to a place is the whole is an immersive experience. So, I guess we're done. All right.
How convenient. In this game, every trial is separated by 3 minutes of slow, pointless mountain climbing. Why? More climbing?
It's not that much climbing.
Maybe this is the final trial. The trial of infinite patience. Though, I guess that's a good way to
He
describe
beat all the trials, guys. He fucking hated this game. He thought it was so boring that he just decided to play more of the game after he beat it.
this entire game.
This guy is not serious.
So, we've looked at all my complaints. Do you feel the same way?
No, I feel like you don't even feel this way. You fucking beat the game multiple times and did all the trials. You're pretending that you didn't do that.
Probably not. Everyone loved this game, while I was left dumbfounded.
You don't dislike this game. I mean, this guy's just like lying. He fucking beat the game twice. There's no...
Why did this game get so much praise? That's the question, right? Well, I think it's a few factors.
Bro, I really don't understand how this guy makes this entire video complaining about how bad this game is, how unfun it is, how unimmersive it is, how this, how much that. But as you watch the video, you find out that he beat the game twice, did like all, and pretty much beat like all the challenges, did all the side missions and all the side quests. So you're telling me you played this game for probably more than 50 hours, even though it's like a 15-hour beat, but you hated this game, thought it was boring, and I don't even understand. It just sounds like this guy wanted to make a video that was just contrarian for the sake of it, right? It's just ridiculous. But okay, whatever, man.
1. People and critics already decided that they were going to love this game before it came out.
Why would they decide that they were going to love the game before it came out? Ascension was so poorly received. Why would they just be like, yeah, we're going to like this game?
There was so much hype around this huge return of Kratos, as there should have been. He's a special cultural icon, unique in gaming. His games are great, and Cory Barlog,
not all of them are great. Ascension is like objectively poopy. It's like so. It's I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it was fucking below mediocre.
The best in the series was back in the director's chair. It looked gorgeous.
The game was great.
And while I was worried about the amounts of walking and talking and babysitting, I was still excited and ready to love it too. I bought it the day it came out, anxiously.
Wow.
And 3 hours in, I had my head in my hands in disbelief and disappointment. It's similar to the way I felt at the end of the new...
It's okay to, because when I first played 2018, it's okay to replay it or play it and go, this doesn't really resonate with me. I remember playing it for the first time and I was like, this is like the progression of it. I played it for the first time and I played through the whole thing. I was like, the story is great. I just don't like the way it plays. I didn't like that you didn't get the blades at first. When I finally got them, I liked them. It was a shift. And that's fine to criticize and that's fine to be upset with. 100%. Upon replaying it, after I replayed the original games, I realized that this is just better. It just plays better. It updates better. It's just better. And like the original God of Wars are still fantastic, but they're older and they don't age as well as the game that's out now. Like, who would have thought that the game out now would feel better to play? This guy is completely nostalgia brained. He has not played the original God of War games in a very long time, and he thinks that like they were amazing, but they are. But like they don't age perfectly. They do age well. You can go play them now and they're decent, but they don't age amazingly. And that's it. So like replaying it, you realize like, oh, this game isn't quite as good as I remember. It's still great, but it's not quite as like amazing as I remember. You've nostalgiaed it. You've made it like, you've championed it. You've pedestalized it from a nostalgia perspective. That's all you've really done.
New Predator film sitting in the theater opening night. 2. People are blinded by the technical...
Hey, Papa, gotta like your videos. I went from Instagram to here. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
achievements.
I would say Kratos was a cultural icon for sure. Like he's actually, I wouldn't say that's an overstatement for him to say.
So beautiful and well crafted, and all the
animations.
animations.
I mean, the God of War games like spawned other games like Dante's Inferno, which isn't as popular. But then like fucking shit, the Star Wars like games. I forgot exactly what they're called. They're fantastic with like Star Killer in it. Those games were great. Like there was a lot of things that they had kind of copied the play style of. God of War was huge in the gaming sphere.
Feel lifelike and smooth and intricate. The controls are tight. There's a real weight behind every attack as old Kratos swings his...
There is a weight. They also use the technology of like the PlayStation to like literally make the... Or is that maybe that's the PlayStation 5 does that. They make the buttons feel harder to press. I don't know if they did that in 2018.
Heavy axe. It has exciting moments, and it impresses with its enormousness in moments like the talking snake and staring down from the snowy mountain.
The Jormungandr.
3. Or they just like it. They had fun with it, and you had fun with it too. Cool. It's not a terrible game. There are some really enjoyable sections, and it's impressive. A friend of mine told me that if it weren't called God of War, I wouldn't hate it. Look, I don't hate it. It's not terrible in every way, like Silent Hill Downpour.
The way that you talk about it, you hate it. I don't think this guy's played the original God of War games in a long time.
Or some broken indie Steam trash game. I'm not putting this and Fallout 76 in the same category, but this could have been so much better. If it weren't called God of War, I would say that it's an incredibly impressive, mediocre game with repetitive combat, restrictive character movement, and a forgettable story. I'd say that
this guy played the game a lot. It's a God of War game, and he's holding it up to the nostalgia of the original games. That's literally all it is. Like, you could tell as he's playing through it.
It's decent and worth checking out because it's solidly made. It's a very complete package, obviously made with love and care, and there's not a trace of predatory microtransactions. It's a large and realized single-player experience, and that should be encouraged in this day and age. But nothing more than that. If it were its own original game with an original title, I'd say it's just alright. But as an installment in the God of War series, it goes in all the wrong directions.
No, it goes in the perfect direction. It makes perfect sense the direction that they went in from an emotional perspective.
This game is a weird
I've heard a lot of complaining. What would he have done to improve it, especially from a story perspective?
case for me because I hate so many decisions that they made.
Like what?
But the game is still put together really well. It's the only game that I don't
What decision do you did not like?
actually like, but I've played like 100 or more hours of.
This guy's lying to you. Here it is, right here. He's played this game for 200 hours and he didn't like it. This guy played. There's just no way. There's no way that this entire video is this guy complaining about how bad this game is and how mediocre it is, but he has on screen that he played it for almost 200 to 300 hours. Like, you can't complain about the game being bad and then play it for 200 or 300 hours. If you truly hated this game, you might have forced yourself through a playthrough once and you would have finished. But you did all the bonuses, all the side quests, multiple times. He beat it, I think, on normal and on the harder difficulty. I don't think he beat it on the hardest difficulty. This doesn't make any sense. What he's saying is not represented through his actual actions. There's no way for you to say that you hated, that you thought this game was horribly mediocre, especially for a God of War game, but play it for 300 fucking hours. It's just, I just don't believe you. I just don't. That's insane.
The game kind of hypnotizes you into playing it more and more. Even if you never feel a sense of excitement, you
What?
still feel like you have to push on.
Okay.
Even if you know that you're not going to find a good fight or interesting item, you feel like you
Okay.
have to go
This guy's coping so hard.
check out that little area on the beach. Even if the story of this game is boring, my attachment to Kratos keeps me moving.
No, it doesn't.
I don't know.
This guy's coping. His identity is to cry about this.
Like I said, it's a weird case. Before you accuse me of just not wanting things to change,
Yes, that's obviously what it is.
I'm a fan of the original Resident Evils, and I really like the Resident Evil 2 remake for the most part. I'm an old-school Doom 1993 fan, and Doom 2016 is one of my favorite games of all time.
Cool.
I'm not against games coming back and being reimagined. However, I do have a problem with stripping out what made the originals so good in the
Dude, you played it for 300 hours. You literally, nobody believes you anymore.
first place if you're not going to replace it with something equally good. If you were to ask me if I would recommend this game, I would say, sure. Everyone should check it out, because its positives are really strong.
Guys, I played it for 300 hours. Maybe you could kind of play it. Maybe you could check it out. It's all right, I guess.
But don't expect to be excited about gameplay, and get ready to be really bored sometimes. Look,
300 hours, dude.
I know that if they had just made this game exactly like the originals, it would have felt stale. I get that. I like that they attempted a new direction. But there are so many areas in
This guy's like pretending to seem reasonable.
which they failed. God of War
Okay.
2018 removed virtually everything great about the originals and replaced it with mediocrity, pretty graphics, and self-importance.
Okay.
Thanks for watching my video. Whether you
I guarantee you this guy played this game more than he played all the originals combined. Just to be clear, okay? The original games are about 8-hour beats. 1, 2, and 3, roughly 8 hours on normal, okay? So that's 24 hours. If you play the mobile game, it's an hour, but we're not going to count that. I played the mobile game. It's all on my fucking account, all playlisted, okay? Chains of Olympus is about 4 hours. Ghost of Sparta, I think it is about 6 hours. So let's say 34 hours. Ascension, I think it was another 8 hours. So let's just actually just make it about 40 hours altogether. We're just gonna make it really 40 to 45 hours. Okay. This game takes 15 hours to beat right here. This motherfucker played this for 300 hours. There's no way that you replayed the game so many times on a 40 hours altogether that you made it to 300 hours. I just don't believe that. There's not as much replayability, I guess. You played this for 200 or 300 hours. That's insane. You played this more than you played every other God of War combined, and you're sitting here pretending that you didn't like it. It is actual you're coping. There's no way that means anything that he's saying.
Whether you love this game or not, thanks for watching. This is my first video like this. Maybe I'll do another. I don't know. This is a lot of work. I apologize for the video and the audio not being of great quality. I have a cheap video capture card, and I had to borrow a microphone, as I never expected to do something like this. Like and subscribe, share with
They just showed Gaia. I hated the way that they instantly Gaia betrayed Kratos. It just made no sense. They should have done a better job with
a
it.
friend if you like it. I'll probably play a lot of Doom Eternal and Mortal Kombat 11 when they come out. Twitch.tv/under
There's no way you're gonna play it for as much as you played fucking God of War. Apparently,
mayo. I never stream, but I might. Thanks. Bye.
that was terrible. There's a part 2. It's only 15 or 20 minutes, so I'm going to watch that as well. I'm going to save Ragnarok review for a different time. This guy obviously wanted to make a follow-up to it, though, because he got a lot of... This is like his only viewed video, I think, so let's watch this.
And on April 20th, 2019, the 1-year anniversary of the new God of War, I released a massive project called How God of War Was Ruined. Since then, the video has gotten a good amount of attention. I was never expecting a positive reaction to a video attacking one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time.
That you played for 300 hours.
But I was at least hoping that people would see where I was coming from. Some did, some didn't. I suggest watching that video before watching this one, as
I certainly did.
I will be elaborating on a few key points I brought up there. I'll link to it in the comments below. When I do big analysis and review videos, I don't like to hide my feelings about what I'm saying. That can lead some people to think my criticism is just a rant. I won't apologize for sounding excited or angry in my first video.
The quality of this video sounds worse, to be honest with you.
I care about this series. I get emotional about things I care about. So as I've been going back to that review, re-examining things for a follow-up, I've decided to do this one in a more clinical fashion. And if you're a fan of the new God of War, I have no issue with you. My issues are with the game. And my hope is that by explaining
The game that he played for 300 hours, by the way.
these issues, maybe, just maybe, we can get a better sequel that will make us all happy. I won't be addressing the story,
Unfortunately, the sequel is a little worse, in my opinion. So
or Atreus, or the world design. That stuff is important, but it's
it's still really good, though.
least of my concerns. We're going to focus on the main critique I have, which is the dumbing down of the game's systems, mainly as it pertains to combat, platforming, and puzzles.
Not for nothing, the original, especially like God of War 1 and 2, even 3, the combat systems weren't super complicated. They weren't like horrible, they weren't uncomplicated, but they weren't super complicated. For the most part, you're going to end your combo with a Prometheus plume. You're going to just use your attacks, and then you're eventually going to end it with a triangle. So you're going to use your light attacks, and then you're going to end it with a triangle. Usually 1-1-2, 2 lights and a heavy. And then Prometheus plume, because it does a lot of damage, and it hits you with a solid stun, and it's quick so that you can get off the full combo without getting attacked. It's not super complex. You would choose one spell for the most part in any meaningful capacity. It was fun, but it was more repetitive than the current God of War, which requires a little more strategy. It's not bad. It's a different system. The newer games are more complex. Thank you for the 11-month small gut from August. My favorite game is GoW II Edge Maxer. Incredible. Thank you.
I'm going to be making comparisons between the new game and the old games, and I'll compare to some other games too, but I want to make it really clear.
I would almost say in some instances that the kit in the newer God of Wars is almost like overwhelming, sometimes like annoyingly so.
That I'm not just trying to say the new game is bad because it's different. There are things in the game that are different that I like. There are games like Resident Evil that have totally different sequels that I like too. I don't care that God of War 2018 is different. I care that parts of the game have been oversimplified and had all their interesting aspects stripped away,
Like
not
what?
evolved. And in this video, we're going to look at how, and perhaps more importantly, why. I'm asking you to set aside the epic presentation of the game for a moment. The beautiful art and graphics, acting, music, fantastic animation, and visceral impact. Let's just talk about the mechanics of gameplay at the foundation of this video game. The biggest change to the God of War series was when they took away the ability to jump.
Yeah, who cares? Again, from a game design perspective, taking away the jump, it reduces, it restricts movement to a degree that makes it easier to program around the game. Jumping, I would argue, is probably one of the biggest issues when it comes to bug fixing, because you can exploit more than anything else. If you've ever looked at God of War 1 speedruns especially, you can exploit so hard that you can skip pretty significant chunks of the game. After you finish Pandora's box, you're getting, you finish Pandora's temple, not the box. Or excuse me, it's not the full temple. After you get out of the main part of the temple and you have to collect, I think it's Hera and maybe Aphrodite's, I don't remember, but you have to collect their pendants to move forward. You can glitch that through double jumping, and then I think you double jump, you use Poseidon's Fury or Poseidon's Rage, excuse me, and then I think you use a different attack to exploit, and you can skip. That's something that you can absolutely do in the original God of War games. So when you have jumping, it can sometimes make it a little difficult to bug fix. So they got rid of it. That's fine. It was just a way that the direction they decided to go into. And I don't necessarily have an issue with it, simplifying the game in different capacities, right? And then if you have jumping, you have to use jump attacks as well, or else it wouldn't feel complete. So they were like, you know what, let's get rid of that. And it makes sense, especially since, again, if you understand that they didn't have the budget they quite wanted to, because Ascension was such a flop that they couldn't finish the game fully in the way that they wanted to. Like I said, they wanted to make you fight that Raven God. That's my understanding, that you see in Helheim. They couldn't allow you to do that because they didn't have the time for it. So they still left it in there as a visual set piece, but they couldn't have you fight it, right? So now we can't jump, and part of that's because it could take time. It would take time to program. It would take time to bug fix. It was something that they left out, and I think it's okay. I think it works out just fine.
Not just double jump and gliding and air dashing, the ability to even single jump. I would argue that removing the ability to jump does significant harm to exploration, to platforming, to combat, to puzzles, all of it. Not being able to jump is the main offender here. I find it hard to imagine anyone making the following statement. God of War 2018 is a better gameplay experience because you can't jump. In this game, jumping is automatic with a simple press of the action button. Kratos jumps across platforms for you, and it's not actually possible to miss the jumps. If this bridge weren't here, you could just run across the area and there would be no difference. The amount of effort required of the player would be the same, 0. If the game actually had true platforming, if at this bridge you actually had to get the angle and distance right to make it across successfully,
Some of the platforming God of War was just kind of annoying and unnecessary. Let's just be real. So
if you couldn't just mindlessly hit the action button without
it wasn't bad. It was just different. Who cares?
falling to your death, would that upset you? Would you have a problem with that in God of War 2018? I really want you to think about it. Forget the old God of War games. Let's go back to Mario. If you want to jump on this platform, you have to get the distance and angle right.
Yes, this is well, Mario could not kill things without jumping on them. Jumping was like the main attack and aspect of the Mario games. I don't understand.
If you miss, you gotta do it again, or you could die.
This is a totally different game. This is a platformer.
Is that a bad thing? Would you prefer jumps in Mario to be automated? Just walk Mario
No, because it's the entire game is jumping. That's the only mechanic in Mario is jumping.
go to the edge, press the action button, and watch Mario complete the jump for you with no effort required from you.
This okay.
I don't think anyone would prefer that. And I
This isn't a good argument.
doubt fans and critics would call it an evolution.
Guys, did you really like the game World of Warcraft? You can't even pull out a gun and shoot in a third-person perspective. Guys, did you like Mario? You couldn't use a Kamehameha wave. Guys, this is kind of cringe.
These are two completely different genres of games. That's like complaining that like a top-down shooter doesn't have like third-person shooting elements in it. Who gives? It's a different fucking game.
Of the franchise. But that's
Hey guys, don't you hate 3D games? They make you move in 3D. Don't you wish it was just 2D?
This is the same comparison.
what a lot of modern games do. Old Tomb Raider games required the player to get the jump right, or they would miss or fall.
Yeah, that's because that's part of the game. Not every game has to be jumping.
And then as the years went on, and games became more cinematic, we had the Uncharted series, where scaling a wall was mostly just mashing the jump button without aiming at all, and
Sure, and I've never played them. People praise the Uncharted games. They have a different level of stimulation for their difficulty. The game is fun for other reasons. The jumping is just not part of the mechanic. They said, let's do more cinematic aspects of it. I remember playing Heavy Rain. That game is all like decision making, like on the fly. Still a fun game. It's a different game. I wouldn't compare it to fucking Mario.
watching Nathan Drake auto-climb. And now we have Kratos, a character from a series that had epic platforming, and he's just standing there waiting for the player to press the action button so we can wait and watch him auto-jump. And it's not just the jumping, it's the climbing too. Climbing went from a mechanic that lets you move around freely, jumping from surface to surface, sliding down quickly, engaging in small combat encounters, dodging environmental obstacles, to attaching Kratos onto a set pattern in the wall, and just holding the thumbstick in the direction he needs to go until he gets there.
So what? It's just a different game. That's fine. You didn't like it because you're comparing it to the original God of War. The game exists well in itself, so...
And if he needs to jump, you just press the action button and he automatically grabs it without even the possibility of failing. And you know what?
Okay.
I don't just want there to be true platforming for the sake of the player experience. It's also because of level design.
I didn't need it. It was fine. The game was fun outside of it.
The ability to jump and climb and explore leads to much more interesting environments and gameplay.
There's not a lot of exploration in the original God of War games. What are you talking about?
Sure, the environments in God of War 2018 look beautiful, but wouldn't it be so much nicer if you could jump over things or on top and freely climb up and over rock formations to explore and find secrets?
Yeah, that could be cool, and that would require triple the amount of time to be able to engage with. Like, if you're able to jump up and go to different areas, there's more bug potential, and then they also have to do more texturing and laying out of the world. Like, in this game, there was a point where they decided to add flying into the game and streamline it for the entirety of the entire world. And there's problems with that because it actually does reduce the immersion of the game because you could fly places very quickly. But anyway, in order to do that, they had to retexture or rebuild a lot of models because they weren't completed, because they never had considered that additional element of the game. And so that took a significant amount of work. It would be the same thing in God of War. If they added jumping, there could be more bugs and they'd have to add more textures to things. Although I'll say they did quite a complete world. But like, yeah, that's it. I think it's fine. I really enjoy when games are self-aware and they decide to not include things for no reason. They did really well with the systems that they implemented, and I was cool with that. I liked how well they did it. That's it.
Like you could in the originals, and in plenty.
My biggest, I guess, my complaint would be that aiming and using the classic controls can be difficult to throw stuff. That's pretty much it. It's not that big of a deal. And some of the bosses could be boring because it was a little repetitive, and the bosses were bland towards the beginning. That's pretty much it.
Of other current games. Jumping also affects combat greatly, especially in a game that has 360-degree combat scenarios where enemies are running at you from across the stage and throwing projectiles. The game already has an ability to launch enemies into the air, but Kratos has no...
What the hell? Why is this so low
no way of
quality?
leaving the ground, when the air combat in the original games was one of the best parts about them. Jumping also massively
They were fine. This was not fun, by the way. This moment here, this jumping was just rage-inducing. So don't even try to make this seem like it was fun.
impacts the puzzle design. Puzzles in the original games required coordination and thought from the player. I can pick from so many examples, but I think I'll just go with this one from God of War III, one that I already showed in my first video. You have to jump up to this thing and push it down. You push it across the floor to the Cerberus, who sets it on fire with his breath. You run back to the first part of the room and jump on this platform that makes the wall lower on the other side. Then you have to run back to the thing and jump on the steam to propel yourself up to the switch before the wall closes. I'm not saying this is the greatest puzzle ever made, but it actually requires effort and timing from the player, and
So does the combat in God of War, which is what the game centralized around more, is combat rather than puzzles. Who would have thought?
utilizes several important mechanics that the game
Also, like, I think it's kind of weird. Oh wait, was that 2018? I'm trying to think. Was it which was the game? Oh, I think it was actually Ragnarok that I'm thinking of. Never mind.
wants you to know at this point. The removal of all platforming options puts God of War 2018 in the awful place of having only two types of puzzles most of the time. Puzzles where you carry things and put them in their spaces, and puzzles where you have to find things and throw your axe at it. It's
Okay.
not enough for a game of this length, especially a sequel to a series that has dozens of unique puzzles. I've played all the games many times. I've played through God of War 2018 at least 4 times. I can think of plenty
But you really didn't like it very much, huh? Okay.
of interesting puzzles
There's just no way that this guy played through this game 4 times and he's pretending that he didn't love it. There's no fucking way.
from the first
Nobody puts this much effort into a game that they do not like. He loves this game.
game just off the top of my head, and I just can't think of a single puzzle from the new game that makes me think, yeah, that was a cool puzzle. And it's directly because of the lack of
Yeah, because it wasn't a puzzle game. There weren't a lot of puzzles in the game.
platforming. I mentioned how jumping affects the combat. So, the combat. When I say the combat was dumbed down,
When I say the combat is dumbed down, I mean I played it for 300 hours. And at this point, 600 hours.
I don't mean to say that there aren't a lot of options and attacks that you can do. It doesn't mean that the
That's what you were literally saying, is that it was bland and one-dimensional, didn't have enough variety, even though it has more variety than the original games.
controls aren't tight, because they are. It doesn't mean that it's not satisfying to kill things in this game, because it
You literally said that nothing was satisfying, and you just did it because you were so bored with the rest of the game that it was something to do.
is. It doesn't mean that you can't be crazy and do lots of wild combos.
You literally made all these points that you're contradicting what you said originally.
I've seen all the videos from GBG, and I know how much you can do with the combat. You can make flashy combos just like you could in the old games.
These combos are more complicated than any old game combo, but okay.
My point about the combat being dumbed down has nothing to do with what your options and attacks
It's not really dumbed down, it's just different.
are. I'm specifically talking about 2 important points of a good combat system, in my opinion. Practical benefit to using attacks relative to skill and risk required, and motivation to use several of those attacks in combat with a big picture benefit. God of War 2018 has plenty of the first category. Light attacks are good for staggering weak enemies and delivering fast damage, and the slower heavy attack will cause them to bounce in the air so you can juggle them while they're defenseless.
Yeah, which by the way, you said there was no air juggling in your first video, but okay.
With the heavy attack, the practical benefit is that it stuns the enemy and allows you to control the encounter. The skill and risk required is your judgment of an appropriate and safe time to perform that slower attack,
Yes, you can get punished by using some attacks.
so that you don't get hit while attempting it. God of War 3 had the same exact thing. Light attacks for fast damage, and a slow heavy attack that juggled the enemy in the air. God of War 2018 has the heavy axe chop that takes a long time to charge up, leaving you vulnerable. But if you do it at the right time, you'll land a high damaging blow and possibly an execution. God of War Classics have the spinning blade attack that can't be stopped once it started, leaving you very vulnerable, but lands many hits on
One of the biggest issues of the classic God of Wars is that your block button was required to be able to use some types of like I guess we'll say weapon, not even combos, but like generated attacks. So if you held your block button and you hit box, you would do like that spinning blade, or you could hit triangle and you would do different ones. The amount of times that I would be trying to block something and then remove the block and then go for a regular attack and then accidentally do that combo was actually frustrating and a problem, a flaw. I will go as far as say is a flaw from the original game, which I haven't really had this problem in this game. Probably because this game's a little slower, so you don't necessarily have the problem of blocking and then using like an attack. But like it was a legitimate frustrating problem in the original games. It was fine, but like it was annoying as shit. Thank you so much for the 5-month small gut from I'm no high. Or I'm not high. I noticed the jumping and never thought about it again. Yeah, right. It wasn't something that I was like, I feel so restricted for not jumping when I was playing it.
surrounding enemies if you use it intelligently. God of War 2018 has the spinning axe throw that stuns a small enemy in place as it spins in the air, and it builds up your permafrost, but it leaves you vulnerable. So we clearly see that the classic games and the new one both have attacks that satisfy the first condition, a practical benefit to their use with a risk to that use, requiring good judgment and skill from the player.
Okay.
Where the games differ massively is in the second department, what I'm calling big picture benefit. Allow me for a moment to switch games and talk a bit about Doom Eternal.
Oh my god.
The shining achievement of Doom Eternal's combat system is how well it teaches players the benefit of using different weapons in different situations. The game wants the player to weapon switch and be mobile instinctively, and
That's what they want you to do in God of War 2018 also. They give you 3 weapons. Actually, your fists are considered a weapon that you can upgrade, so they give you 3 weapons, basically.
it creates that instinct through the early game incentive to target enemy weak points and presenting weapon-specific counters, whether that's using the plasma rifle
They have the same thing in God of War. In fact, there are some enemies that are like immune to fire damage or frost damage.
to explode shield guys, shooting off turrets and cannons with long-range precision weapons, using your flame belch on a group of enemies instead of just one to get a large armor bonus.
Generally speaking, the Blades of Chaos are better for large groups of enemies, and then the axe is better for smaller groups of enemies. So like the harder hitting attacks.
Learning to traverse combat scenarios.
And then again, like if you use your axe to put frost on an enemy and you take your fire weapons out, you'll do more damage. And then you kind of like are supposed to go back and forth in like this weapon juggling type of a thing.
Scenarios with the meat hook to get a far glory kill and recover health, weapon swapping to increase your damage output, staggering big enemies with grenades so they can't hit you while you shoot them. Each of these tactics has an individual benefit, but there's also a big picture benefit. If you play that way, using all the tools the game gives you, it allows greater control of the arena, management of your health, preservation of ammo, and leveling up of individual weapons as you progress. If you just try to power through with one or two things, you'll miss out on a lot of that stuff. Sure, you can play that way once you dominate the game and start speedrunning it, but that's any game. We're talking about the general player experience of someone playing the game for their first or second time on a challenging difficulty. I compare Doom Eternal frequently to the old God of War games because they have similar combat philosophies. Everyone knows that in the old games, especially the first one, you could just spam light, heavy for an easy combo that you could pretty much rely on for every encounter, if you were playing on a low difficulty. There were these 3-hit power combos that were very good to use and killed enemies quickly, so I have to ask, if you could kill most things quickly with a simple 3-hit heavy combo, why on earth would you ever do anything else? Why would you use the air launch into a multi-hit combo, grab them in the air, and bounce them back up to do it again? Why would you use the grounded spinning attack that you couldn't cancel, possibly getting yourself hit? The answer is big picture benefit. The answer is resource management and performance-based XP tied to the upgrade system. When you string together a bunch of attacks, you get an XP bonus through the combat count.
Oh, okay. I thought we were gonna get here. He just doesn't like that you don't have an XP counter when you do more attacks. It's a different game. That's pretty much it. It's a different game. And that's all I gotta say. It's a different game. There's still resource management through cooldowns and through health and through rage, which he hasn't mentioned a single time, by the way, which is fucking bizarre. He really hasn't. I actually just now we've watched over an hour of his content, and he hasn't mentioned rage a single time, which is another resource he just doesn't bring up in either of the games. But it is a resource, and I would say it's more precious in the the newer God of Wars, because it was like pretty. You got a lot of rage in the other God of Wars, especially too. But yeah, there's just a different balancing of resources, and that's it.
Counter. Orbs, as they're called in the old games. If you just kill something with a heavy combo, you get nothing. If you string together a multi-hit move into a combo kill, the combo counter rewards you with more and more XP. And when you play on the higher, more challenging difficulties, your ability to control the fight depends on how good your upgrades are. The game incentivizes creative, fun playstyles by giving you the XP you need to become stronger.
Well, no, the game actually would incentivize using weaker attacks and playing in a more monotonous way to generate as many combos as possible to get as many orbs as possible. So what you're saying there actually is probably one factor as to why they decided not to add a very monotonous system in there. A combo system that rewards you for more hits means that you're incentivized to use more hits over more damage or actually get through the fight in a productive way. So if you focus on that system, you're playing monotonously to try to maximize your character in a way that's unfun. That's literally it. So when you praise this system, it's not really a system worth praising. It's actually stupid as fuck when you think about it, because it doesn't really allow you to do as many play styles as you want. It makes it so that you have to play as monotonously as you can in order to do as little damage as you can to maximize the amount of orbs that you get. It exists. It's not good. It's not bad. It is just a thing. Liking that system a lot. I don't even think that you like the system that much. You just seem to like want to come all over it. I don't really get it. It doesn't really matter though. It doesn't really have a productive playstyle. It actually corners you into being as monotonous as possible. It's an archaic playstyle that actually doesn't have a lot of. It doesn't really reward the player with fun throughout it.
So these options of risky multi-hit attacks and air juggles and brutal executions aren't just there because they're fun to do, and not just because they might occasionally provide an individual benefit to a moment of the fight. They benefit the player's overall experience. Not only is it very fun to play this way,
It's not that fun to play that way.
game rewards you for it. When you cross that 100 hit mark on the combo counter, it feels really good to see that big XP bonus, because now you're closer to unlocking an upgrade for your weapons or magic. You have to figure human nature into the equation. If a dumb, easy tactic exists, most people will naturally fall into it and repeat it through the whole game if it works. People played like that in the original God of War games if they played on the lower difficulties, and they did it in the new game too. But the original
On the lower difficulties, he said, just like you said in the original God of Wars, you could do that too.
games did a great job at incentivizing more interesting playstyles by attaching both immediate benefits to their use and rewarding the player with XP to assist in their progression and open up even more options. A good game doesn't just throw a bunch of options at the player and say, here, do whatever. It
You were praising the other. What that gives you more options to do something. That gives you more playstyle variation.
gives real reasons to use those options and makes their use something that affects the larger experience of the game. So what about God of War 2018? Is there a big picture benefit? I would say there isn't. It includes the same flashy fun combat options, but with no reason to use them. Once you find an easy way to kill enemies, say stun them with Atreus arrows, run in with a ground pound, trigger Wrath of the Frost, and then swing wildly until everything dies, let me pose to you the same question I asked about the heavy combo attacks in the original game. Why would you ever do anything else? Why would you not just do the thing that kills everyone as quickly as possible. I know the other options are there.
Restricting the player to do as little damage as possible to generate orbs is not fun. You can do things differently. Everybody's going to have a playstyle preference and difference. That's why you're going to have different types of armor. Maybe you want to go more strength oriented or more luck oriented or more health oriented, and then you're going to use a weapon that you like more. There's more variation. There's a ton of different what the fuck, runic attacks. It's just, there's different variation. You can prioritize your fists more. You can do more of the axe. You can do more of the blades. There's plenty of variation in this game. What are you talking about? You're just talking.
I know there are ways to have fun with the combat system. I'm agreeing with you that
you played for like 500 hours at this point. Of course you would agree with that.
Those flashy combat options are more fun than the dumb power attacks, just like they were in the originals. But setting aside the fact that it's just fun, why would I use them? Especially in difficult fights when it's risky to do them if you're not good at the game yet. Why would I attempt all these crazy and fun combos if I'm just going to get killed in the process?
You can't use crazy or fun combos in this fight in general, because this fight's meant to be played slowly. The fight that he's doing, this enemy has so much armor, you can't stun him until the armor breaks, and that doesn't happen until like his health gets to this point. So you literally cannot do any risky plays. It's the design of this specific enemy is that you have to do shorter burst attacks and kind of walk out, because this enemy is slow, but he hits extraordinarily hard. He'll like really one-shot you on the hardest difficulty, and you can't stun him. So you can't stun him with runic attacks. Like most runic attacks will stun any enemy, even bosses, momentarily. So like you can get through the combo of the attack. This one it doesn't work on because it has armor on it. So like, yeah, you're not incentivized to do anything here except for play slow and safe, because this enemy is slow and powerful. So you can't really use this as a representation on the screen here. It makes you look silly.
Process. The originals had an answer to this question. The answer was, because if you get good at these things that are fun and risky and flashy, you'll get upgrades faster, which makes the game even more fun. The new game doesn't have an answer to that question, because there's no combo counter. The game doesn't care if you do a 3-hit combo or a 40-hit combo. There's no XP bonus. You can play...
Yeah, why would you... Because again, that makes the game fucking boring. Incentivizing taking longer in fights sounds boring as shit. Because that's what you're saying. Hits, not damage, matter means that you're incentivized to do as many weak hits as possible to generate as many points, orbs as possible, or combo points as possible, so you can get orbs so you can unlock gear. That sounds fucking boring. That's literally boring. That's completely stripping you of playstyle choice and telling you you have to play in a really boring fucking way. That's boring. You liked the system and that's cool, but the system is fundamentally shit. It really is. Thinking about it more and more, it's a shit system. The combo system is fucking dumb. I understand the aspect of it of like, oh, if you continuously attack without getting hit, you feel powerful because you're not getting hit and you feel like the flow of your battle is going really well. But guess what? That system exists in the new God of War games, and it's called the permafrost system. The permafrost system makes you more powerful the longer you go with the combo without getting hit. If you get hit, you lose the permafrost system, so you lose damage. It's the same incentive. The difference is you're not forcefully restricted into doing this to upgrade your gear, like when it comes to like some kind of an orb system. They have that system in there. You're just not thinking about that system, right? The incentivized system of playing well and not getting hit exists in both games, but it is better in the newer God of Wars because you don't have to play boring in order to generate as much orbs or XP basically as possible to unlock more gear. You can play however you want, and you'll be able to unlock the gear your abilities through XP. That's it. It's a better system. The system exists in a different way, but you're not thinking about it like that because you're so honed into the original God of Wars that for some reason you played the new one for 500 fucking hours. It makes no sense to me. This guy's crazy.
Play like a pro or like a total amateur, and the XP reward is the same in the end, and so are the loot drops. The game robs you of that feeling of, yeah, I played that room really well, because there's no feedback. Once you play the game multiple times, you can start integrating all these cool combos, but the game doesn't actually drive players in early playthroughs to get good at this stuff.
It's an early playthrough on an easy difficulty. It's more about the story. What are you talking about? It's the same thing with the other God of Wars. You beat them, and then you can play them again, and you can get more creative as it gets harder.
It's better to just find a few simple things that work and repeat them to make the game easier.
Yes, that's how every game is. You start simple, you get good at simple, and then you start integrating more difficult stuff. You're not saying anything intelligent.
And while we're on that, why wouldn't you want to make the fight easier if it doesn't matter what you do? If landing heavy hits and spamming magic and then running away till you can do it again after your magic recharges, if that grants the same outcome as landing a bunch of crazy fun combos and dominating the fight, what's the point if the result is exactly the same? You might say getting good at the combat and combos allows you to make it out of fights with more health, and you'd be right, but it doesn't matter. It used to be that if you took a lot of damage in a fight, it put you in a bad situation.
It does matter, because then you'll die, and you might go back to a different area of the game. That's pretty much it.
Situation for the next room, because there's no way to heal yourself if you don't find a health chest. And now you walk into the next fight with low health, and it's going to be really tough.
Wow, that sounds really boring. It sounds actually fucking stupid.
This looming threat was even more incentive to play well and get good at the game. It also provided an interesting...
You know what's way crazy? If you die in this game, in any game, you have to redo the challenge. So it's cool to not die. And there's the incentive of not dying is to get through it. The quality of life of getting your health back after you lose a challenge is not fucking overwhelmingly destructive to the game.
Counterbalance to the performance-based XP system. If you were too risky and got greedy in your combo play, you got hit, and you don't want to make it out of this fight low on health. You're trying to play in a fun, dynamic combo-based way.
So you're saying that the game's like, yeah, you're telling us that the game wants you to get hit? Like, that's obviously not the case. It's just not as punishing if you do. It's not a bad system.
To get the XP bonus, while simultaneously trying to be smart and defensive so you don't take damage. And it was a rush when you hit that balance. On top of that was the magic system. Magic didn't recharge. You found it in chests, so you had to actually think about when you were going to use it and which magic attack to use.
Yeah, there's a cooldown on your magic in the newer games, which means you have to think about when you use it in a fight. But the fights are isolated to each other rather than the fights being isolated to multiple encounters at the same time. That's it.
Are you going to use something that extends your combo?
You could say that the original God of War was more of a Gauntlet style, whereas like the current God of War is more of an individual like fight style. A lot of games do this.
Ability? Are you going to use something that freezes a heavy enemy so you can smash him right away? Are you going to use a panic move that hits everything around you? Whatever you do, you got to be smart about it. You can't just walk into every fight and use your whole magic meter. You have to find a chest to get more magic, just like health, so you can't abuse it like that. Health and magic were resources that had to be managed.
Yeah, you can't abuse it in this either because you have a cooldown management system instead.
From fight to fight, and it inspires smart tactical play in combination with the performance-based XP system. It's not just fun stuff to do that you can ignore to spam heavy attacks the whole game. There's a real big picture benefit to using all this stuff and playing in a fun, dynamic way, especially on higher difficulties. Not only does God of War 2018 not have the XP reward and combo incentive, it doesn't have the resource management either.
Yes, it does. This is literally a resource. You have rage, you have health. These are resources. You have the rage meter. You have to monitor your rage, your health, your cooldowns of multiple weapons, your permafrost, your maelstrom. Maelstrom is the newer game. Whatever the fucking fire one was. These are all resources. These are all systems that you have to manage in each fight. They're all resources. It's just managed differently. Pretending that these aren't resource management. Like if you have a 2-minute cooldown on your heavy runic attack and you use that, you realize you can't use it for 2 minutes, right? So if you're in a fight, which is going to last probably 2 minutes or less, you get to use that one time. So you want to make sure you use it at the correct time. That is a resource management. It's a different resource, but it is still a management of resources.
Magic is on a cooldown, so are Atreus' powers. So there's nothing stopping you from just running into a room of enemies, spamming all your magic attacks and powers, and then cleaning up the rest of the room.
There's nothing stopping you in the current game or the old games from doing the same thing. Like using your magic and then cleaning up the rest afterwards. It's not like there were no magic chests around. But some encounters are going to be a lot harder and you can't just do that. Some of the encounters are just supposed to be a bunch of guys standing there. And then there are some times where there's from fight to fight to fight to fight that's happening like in succession, where like maybe you don't necessarily want to waste your abilities. Okay.
Did you use up all your magic? Who cares? It'll recharge.
Why hasn't this guy showed a single time of playing with against the Valkyries? He's always showing small enemies. He's not playing what? Show us the Valkyries. Show us you fighting the Valkyries and show us how easy it was to just spam your abilities and your weapons on those.
And be back at 100% in like 20 seconds. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about your health either because it
yes, you do.
Too recharges.
Yeah, but you don't want to lose the fight because then that sucks and it's boring.
Not in the way magic does, but look what happens if I exit a fight with low health. I run to the next area, die immediately, and then I respawn with full health. So
cool, man. That's a really nice quality of life for people who are not trying to sit there and fucking be annoyed the entire time.
It doesn't matter. On one side, we have making
you still have to get through the fight.
Through combat by playing well and not taking damage, and on the other, making it out of combat by playing like an idiot and losing a lot of health.
This game is much more boss rushy too.
What's the difference? There is none. So in God of War 2018, there's no XP incentive for dynamic play or using combos.
What do you mean is there's no XP incentive for playing fun? You have to play slow and do weak attacks in the old game to get as many orbs as possible by your logic.
There's no reason to care about how much health you saved when you...
There is, because you don't want to die in your fights.
Finish a fight because...
I'm surprised he hasn't complained about how there's multiple phases of a lot of the bosses, and in some instances when you die you get to go back to like the phase you were on. So if there's 3 instant phases, you'll die and you'll go back to the beginning of that phase with full health. I would have expected him to complain about that.
Because you can just die and get all your health back in the next...
Which like I don't care about because those were only on like cinematic boss fights. They weren't on like Valkyries, I don't think, and they weren't on Berserkers in the newer games. So it's really more about like, hey, this is more of a play style experience that you get through, and like the real difficulty of the game starts later when we give you a bunch of different bosses where you can't do that and it resets once you die. So
next room, there's no reason to intelligently use your magic attacks because they recharge. The platforming requires no skill.
Your mana recharges too. You get your mana back.
Or thought from the player.
Who cares? It's just not in the game.
And the puzzles are monotonous, restricted by the lack of platforming options.
Maybe it's not a puzzle game.
But why? Why is the game like this?
Because it's this is what people want to play. It's more of like an RPG type of game that people really like, so they decide to go in that direction.
With all the graphical leaps and beautiful music, amazing character models, tight controls,
and like if you played Ascension, which I did, you could see that they were trying to go in a direction of a more difficulty styled game that played more like a Souls game. So I feel like that's more of like what this is.
Visceral action. Why did all these gameplay downgrades happen? I think the answer lies
because I'm pretty sure like in Souls games, like it's not exactly like this. This is not a Souls game, but it has like some of those elements of where it's trying to be a little more difficult. But for the most part, you can get the checkpoints in Souls games where it's like, okay, boss time, and like you're full up there. I don't know how much slogging through it there is. There probably are moments of slogging through it more. I wouldn't say that there's not. But this is more about like boss rushing and like fighting a boss fully prepared and going into it rather than having to do resource management through like a platforming section of a game. It's a different style of game.
Right here in the menu. The easy difficulty is not called easy. It's called give me a story.
Oh no, a little flavor text. We're gonna die.
The #1 priority of
this being a complaint makes you look like a fucking moron. I don't even know how to talk to you at this point.
The developers was story, immersion, and cinematics over everything else.
It's a fucking easy mode. That's how all easy modes are. They're more about getting through the game and the story than it actually being hard. I don't understand how this is just they decided to label it differently. I don't understand.
Included difficult combat in the higher difficulty settings for people who want to challenge, but they wanted their game to be something more than a game. To be some kind of...
Oh, I think I know what he's trying to say, but he doesn't know how to communicate because he's like a babbling fool. I think what he's trying to say here is that because there is a mode that says give me a story, that means the game is primarily a story-driven game. And because it's a story-driven game, that means that they put more consideration to how the story plays than to the game actually being fun. That's, I think, what they're saying. There's no world, I guess, where you can say, I want a really good story-driven game with a really good combat system as well. I think God of War 2018 does that pretty well. I would say that the story in Ragnarok sometimes gets in the way of the game, where you have to play as Atreus too much, and he fucking sucks. Actually, I think the issue isn't the story. It's the fucking how much playing Atreus sucks. They need to make him feel stronger, because he's a shitty Kratos. Make him feel better. Anyway, I think that's what he's trying to say, but like you played it for fucking 300 hours at least, so... you can't really say it's not fun.
Transcendent artistic experience that happens to contain gameplay. It's why the first 10 minutes of the game involve no actual gameplay, as you hold up on the thumbstick for 10 minutes carrying a tree.
Bro, if you play this game for 300 hours, you did way more than just do story, so...
as the game teaches you how to move your character as if you've never held a controller in your hand before. Put yourself in the shoes of...
oh no, the game is introducing how to play your character through gameplay.
someone who doesn't know how to play games. Call up your great-grandfather who can't even finish the first level in Sonic the Hedgehog. Put a controller in his hand and ask him to play the original God of War on the easy difficulty. Watch him mash the square button and make it through the combat with no problem, only to then...
he'd probably lose.
And get totally stuck by not being able to time his jumps correctly, or...
this platforming is fucking dog shit, by the way. This is not a good part of the game. It sucks. This is not fun. He's pretending that this part of the game was fun, and I don't get it. It wasn't fun to do.
balanced across the water after the first Hydra head encounter, repeatedly falling into the sea, not being able to get past...
this part sucks.
That's the first puzzle where you have to push a box across the floor fast enough so the archers don't break it. You know, all the parts of the game that require coordination and thought.
These parts of the game were the least fun parts of the game. And they're not inclusive. Like people, they want to make games that everybody can play. So when these types of aspects, like these types of puzzles, which this probably does get easier, but I know that the tightrope walking doesn't, because they explicitly tell you that lowering the difficulty won't make that easier. And he's not showing the worst one in God of War 1, which is fucking terrible. Which is like at some point in like the Pandora's box area, or is it? Yeah. That's not fun. That's not fun. That doesn't let people play the game. The button mashing, I don't think gets easier on easy mode. That's not fun. Slamming the button, hitting O as much as possible is not fun, stimulating gameplay. It actually is annoying as shit. It's just doing a thing as much as possible. It's not interesting or stimulating. It makes it so that some people can't get through the game arbitrarily for absolutely no fucking stupid reason. It's not fun. Some of these puzzles aren't fun. They don't let as many people play as possible. And for people that are getting older, we have like fucking different levels of arthritis. All right, I don't have arthritis, but my fucking hands hurt sometimes. They get in pain. I don't want to sit here and button mash. I like that they didn't do that in God of War, in the newer God of Wars, in any meaningful way. There are moments where you button mash, like you hit the button a lot, but you don't have to hit it so fast that you fucking damage your finger. My fingers were sore replaying the original God of War game, especially the first one, because of how much you have to mash it, and it becomes so fucking annoying, especially in the last boss fight when you fight Ares, and after the first phase, moving to the next phase requires you to like get him to a certain amount of health, grab him, tap the button a bunch of times, stop, and then do a button combination, and you'll fuck it up so many times you end up redoing it, and it gets so goddamn boring. So, like, what are you talking about? You're praising shit aspects of the game. You're sitting here praising boring, horrible aspects of the game that do nothing but, like, suck. These are the shittiest parts of the game. These no, my fingers don't get sore playing WoW. These parts of the game, they used to actually, but like that's because I didn't have like a nice keyboard or chair. It sounds funny enough, but these are not fun aspects of the game. Making things easier for quality of life is not a bad movement in the game. It's fine to remove shitty portions of games that make the game hard to play for people. They want people to play the game. They want people to play God of War. Why would they intentionally add stupid elitist roadblocks that just make people go, this is really cool because you can't do it? Nobody wants that. I'm not playing God of War so you can't. I'm playing God of War because I find it fun and I want to talk about it. So I'd rather some fucking person that sucks at games be able to play it too. These are not good parts of the games. The tightrope walking sucked in the original God of War. The button mashing sucked in the original God of War. The quick time events were okay, but they were too tight. They kind of sucked. They could have been done better. They were in God of War 2. The fucking combo system that incentivizes you to play as slowly as possible with light attacks sucks. It's not a good system in the game. It's not fun. It's not stimulating. It's not positive. It's not something that makes people go, wow, this is amazing. There are aspects of a game from an older time where the games were unnecessarily hard for no reason in some ways. They weren't good. You're pretending that they were, but they're not good. They're not fun parts of the game at all.
Regardless of the difficulty setting. They didn't want that with the new God of War, so they took it out. They don't want Grandpa or any beginner to be challenged in any way when they play on the easy setting. They want people who can barely hold a controller in their hand without dropping it on the floor and knocking over the TV set to be able to play the game and take in the beautiful levels and epic emotional story with no obstacles in their way. And
yeah, cool. Yeah, so why is that negative? Like, you're telling me that Grandpa can come and play the game and get through it, and Grandpa, who probably doesn't even like video games, and can get through it and without having a struggling experience, that's bad? Why? That's the experience that Grandpa wants. I don't want that experience, so I'm not going to play it on story mode. But why is it so bad that Grandpa wants to have fun by just steamrolling through the game?
And as a result, everyone else who actually wants those interesting and challenging mechanics in a game doesn't get them.
Those mechanics were not interesting, by the way.
They didn't want a performance-based XP system for the combat, so people who aren't good at combat feel no pressure to actually play the game well and become good at it. Just let them upgrade things as quickly as everyone else. They
Yay, who cares?
removed all consequences of health and magic resource usage so that the worst players in the world
Those aren't gone in the harder difficulties.
will never have to think about what they're doing. They streamlined all the puzzles into the kinds of puzzles you'd find in the waiting room of a dentist office, so no one ever has to feel challenged when trying to progress through the level. They took away your ability to jump and fall, so the guy who doesn't care about gaming at all will never feel frustrated by a platforming section and he can just mash his way through to the next cinematic.
So why'd you play it for like 300 hours? I don't understand.
I honestly fail to see how any of these things make God of War 2018 a better game. I fail to see how this counts as an
I just explained it.
evolution of the franchise. You can change art style and the graphics and the music and weapons. You can put in armor and gear customization and open world design and side quests. You can change the camera angle and give Kratos a son and make me row a boat for hours. You can do all that in your new mature God of War game and still include true platforming, performance-based XP, interesting puzzles, and health and magic management during combat.
You do have health, well, you have health cooldown and rage management during combat, and you have maelstrom management, or excuse me, you have permafrost management.
Just because you did all that other stuff doesn't mean the rest has to go. They removed so much from the gameplay and replaced it with loot hunting and gear specking and talking. And
yeah, that's just RPG elements. You could just not do that.
the only way to actually have a challenge is to play on the highest difficulties where the enemies are harder to kill and you take a lot of damage.
Yes, that's why they exist.
But that's it. There's nothing else in the game besides the combat that demands your attention. And the original games demanded so much more and felt a lot
Like what? The combat was really the only thing that demanded your attention. Everything else was a roadblock. Nobody played God of War. They were like, I cannot wait to tightrope walk. I cannot wait to get home tonight and do tightrope walking because I'm playing God of War for that. Nobody did that. That's what you're saying. You're saying people were like masturbating over, nobody was like, my favorite part of the game? You know, probably when I was in Pandora's Temple trying to jump over all those buzzsaws on the tightrope when the camera was objectively worse than in this game, by the way. That was my favorite part of the game. Nobody ever said that. Those were slogs. They were boring. They were shitty. Nobody cared about that. They sucked. There was nobody. Those are the worst parts of the game. The worst parts of the game, not the puzzles. They're fine. The worst parts of the game are tightrope walking and shit. They're not good. Button mashing. Nope, that's not fun. Go back. If you're right now, go play God of War 1 and tell me what the worst parts of the game was. You're gonna say it's the tightrope walking and the fucking button mashing. It was the worst part. Like having to hit O a bunch of times. It's not fun. It's not stimulating. It doesn't add to the experience. It's fucking boring. And I get why it existed back then, and I used to love it, but I play it now. I'm like, it's just stupid. It gets in the way of the game. It's just annoying. It's not fun. It's just like, it's brain dead. It's dumb.
lot more rewarding to play as a result. It's like how you can have fun playing a thoughtful game of chess, and you can have fun playing a simple game like checkers. Both of these games can exist with no problem. But if a sequel to chess came out and it played like checkers, people would be pissed. And it
that's just not even a good comparison.
doesn't matter if it looks a lot prettier and feels mature. I don't hate the new God of War. I don't think people are stupid for liking it. What it does well, it does very well. I'd never call it a bad game, but I
So he's definitely changing his narrative in this game.
do think that as a game with gameplay mechanics, it's a serious downgrade. But I remain optimistic about
Incorrect.
the future because it's so easy to fix. Make your new God of War for the new generation, but let Kratos jump and put in actual consequences to how you handle combat, and we'll be off to a
So I just want to be very clear. He's saying have consequences to handle combat. Just wanted to show you something here.
with gameplay mechanics. It's a serious downgrade. But I remain optimistic about the future because it's so easy to fix.
This enemy right here just made itself go on fire. If you go and try to physically melee engage with it, it will explode and do a significant amount of damage to you, right? That's a consequence of not playing the game well or understanding that enemy. Since he does, you see how he throws the axe at
Make
it,
your new God of War
and it explodes, right? These things still exist. If you ran in and charged into that enemy and you didn't do that first, you would have taken a significant amount of damage and you would have fucking died and you would have been pissed off, right? They're making you actively think. And just because you get your health back when you redo that part doesn't mean that it's going to make it any easier. Now you understand it better. And that's what it's about. It's about going into every challenge with all your abilities so it doesn't feel unfair. The game is designed and balanced around you having all of your resources, every fight for the most part, except maybe your rage. And if you die, it's okay. You can go back and do it again. And it'll be challenging, but you have all your resources so it doesn't feel unfair. That's the point. Okay, the game is designed around that fun aspect and that fun element of being potentially completely prepared for every fight in case you get fucked over and not having to redo like 20 minutes of something because you forgot to save or because your game crashed or because whatever happens or because you died. It's okay.
War for the new generation, but let Kratos jump and put in actual consequences to how you handle combat, and we'll be off to a great start. I'm not saying they need to recreate the old games. I'm not saying that. I'm only saying that they can make their new God of War without totally abandoning the core elements that made the originals so good in the first place. I don't see how you can look at the new God of War and
The core elements are really like the story and the brutality, and they still have the story's better, frankly, in my opinion, and the brutality is different. It feels different. It's not quite as bloody or gory, but it's still pretty brutal.
say that the ability to jump and performance-based rewards and thoughtful puzzles wouldn't make it a better game. And that's where I'm going to rest my case. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching. Thank you for your patience. I know people get really heated and defensive about this game because so many consider it a masterpiece. So I appreciate you hearing me out. You can subscribe to this channel for more pieces like this, as well as a lot of other stuff. Definitely check back here when the next game gets revealed. I can't wait to see how it all plays out. Until next time.
Okay. Cool. Bad video, I guess. But that's it for now. Maybe I'll do the Ragnarok one another time, and then the Valhalla one once I finish playing Valhalla. I'm a little late to it, but yeah.